Yes, sir.
This special meeting of the Judson Board of Trustees is hereby called to order at 3:30 p.m. I am very pleased you've taken time to join us this afternoon in compliance with the State Government Code on open meetings. This afternoon's agenda has been appropriately posted, and we will establish a quorum. I will call roll. So if we could mark ourselves present. Okay, quorum is present. Miss Deborah Eaton is running a little late, but she will be here later on today. We do have one citizen to be heard, and so let me go ahead and call Dr. Shoemaker up regarding compensation of employees in the 505. Dr. Shoemaker?
Thank you. I wanted to say that I appreciate the information that came from HR as far as the compensation plans go in the applicable years chart. So that's greatly appreciated. I also appreciate the fact that the board's looking into those pay grades and that we're looking at the rubric today. So what's being handed out to the board is, again, those compensation plans, and it illustrates the suppression and manipulation of 505. Based on the fact of the back of those packets, you can clearly see that for 2001, 2002, there was every indication that the district would give a $14.75 raise per day at the 505, when in fact there was a suppression of almost $30 at midpoint. So what I'm asking for, while you're taking into consideration, you're trying to bring things up to par and be equitable, that you pay recompense to those of us who are financially harmed. We did nothing wrong but show up to work on a daily basis to do the bidding of the campuses and of the people that are over us. And what was done to us was a stripping of $30 a day. For me personally, at this point, it's about $10,000 that I've been shorted in the last year and a half. And I don't know anyone in this room that would be okay with that. So I appreciate your looking into it, and I also trust that the next time I'm able to speak, I can say thank you for doing what's right.
Thank you, Dr. Shoemaker. We're here for program review, and we have an item on the rubric. My hope is to be officially done with this meeting by 6:30, if not a little earlier, depending on how the program review portion goes and our discussion on the rubric. So I just want to kind of put that out in the universe. So Dr. Fields, if you want to start with the program review.
Yes, sir, definitely. We took the liberty of contacting several different departments and asking them to put together the program review. And the first on the list for today would be technology, and all of them will cover different aspects of their departments, but she's going to cover the technology, safety, and security portion. So, Dr. Gosh?
Thank you, Dr. Fields, and thank you, Board President and board members, for having us today. We wanted to share some information from the department. So I know my team members are here, so we hope to be able to answer some questions as we go through. I am going to start with what our motto is in terms of a department. I want to highlight this as a particular component of our department, in that the target population statement that you see there is a statement discussing a unified team that maintains open lines of communication and strives to provide safe and secure technologies through our cohesive support services to students and staff in our Judson community. And the reason I point that out is that is a statement that was actually put together by everyone in our department. Every stakeholder and every member of our staff actually had input into that. And so it is what helps to guide us in terms of our key strategies for each year, as well as some of the results that we have that come forward. So I will start with the first area in terms of what we actually cover. So the first area really is student support, and our student support across the district in terms of technology really comes through our PIEMS and data services, which handles our student information system, our registration system, our grading, and so on for our students and our staff, our instructional programs and materials, where we deal with our instructional materials allotment, as well as working directly with curriculum and instruction to coordinate those, our libraries, and also our instructional technology department as well. So our key strategy this year is we really wanted to design some quality staff development to align to many of our programs. And so you'll see the funding amount there is strictly related to that professional development, but I'd like to point out a few of the components of that in terms of some of the projects that have been completed through that. I know one of the major focuses that we had this year was focusing on the Nearpod training, which was a technology component that we worked with CNI to identify, and that actually came out of the process of us looking at how can we better service the district in terms of identifying programs that maybe campuses are buying, but yet if we bought it collectively, it would be something that we could actually save money for the district. It is a program that as we examined, we noticed that we had a variety of campuses that were purchasing it, and the amount of dollars that were going out just on those few campuses, we could almost buy it for every campus for what that was costing us. So then we were able to do that with the input of CNI, and so we've helped to lead that particular charge in that area. In addition, the other focus with instructional technology for that has to do with Canvas and our implementation of the Canvas program through allowing, and that is at our secondary level. So it's kind of a phase-in process where we wanted to go back and retrain on that process. So we helped to kind of build that through that. We've also focused on our ClearTouch panels and the transition there with some of the interactive software that's involved in that. In our library programs, we have also expanded some of our programming that we have within that to extend the makerspaces. I know we were able to add 5 different makerspaces across the district and provide that training to those campuses, and that has been a year-long implementation. We have seen some of the positive effects of that space within the campus and allowing the extension of the library out into the classrooms. We recently revised the Battle of the Books program, where we asked each campus, instead of each campus having their own and just having one district event, we actually had all of the campuses compete, and then from that, we selected winners that will now compete in a district event. So we'll actually have a district Battle of the Books based on the students in 5th grade that participated in that program. So we've been able to focus on some of those student outcomes to really help our reading program. In addition, we've created a variety of jump starts to help with our business programs, with our instructional programs, as well as our PIEMS programs. I know our PIEMS department has spent a lot of time this year refining the process for how we are doing master scheduling and extending that in terms of working with CNI to make sure, and with the counseling department, to make sure that our credits are aligned and that our course catalogs are aligned and that we are maximizing the number of sections that we have in our master schedule to help with staffing as well. And so we have extended that and developed those training materials. The second component here in terms of our key strategies has to do with our the networking system, cybersecurity, desktop services, and our business support. And I am going to turn that over to Matthew Fields to deliver that for you.
Good afternoon, Board President, Dr. Fields. So technology is a team, it's 5 distinct teams. We operate as a singularity. Our goal, our purpose this year was to be purposeful with the spending of the monies to make sure that we maximize the ROI for the district. We did that in a couple ways. One of those ways was we worked with finance to make sure that all purchases for the district for technology came through technology for verification of, will it work with our systems? Is it legal? Make sure it's not going to leak any data, things like that. We did that by, what that allowed us to do is look at the commodity codes, make sure that we are also staying under our 50,000 for each commodity. If we didn't, we would bring it back to the board. The second part of that, again, was the verification to make sure that it worked with this. So this year, we also created and revised many of the procedures that we found lacking or not there at all. That has helped us to build our department a little bit stronger, make sure that we are able to explain the things that we're doing for purchasing and whatnot. And I'm not going to go over the numbers. You can see the numbers there. Obviously, we did a ton with the bond this year. We've done a bunch of these security installs. Those are what those numbers are up there. If y'all have any questions about that, we can go over that later.
On our safety and security program, one of the things we focused on strategically this year had to do with some of the standardizations of our processes in terms of how we handle safety and security across the district. One of the items that I know was brought forward this last year had to do with how we handled our drill process, how many lockdown drills we had each year, how many fire drills we had, and shelter drills. I am pleased to say that the results of standardizing that process is that as of yesterday, we have completed all lockdown drills for the first semester and second semester for all of the sites across the district. In addition, we have completed almost all other drills that are required by the state, with the exception of a few that we will complete towards the end of the year. One of those is the fire drills, which we're required to have one every month. So we will continue with those throughout the end of the year. And there's a few shelter drills that we just have to do once a year. So that has been a very positive effect in terms of standardizing the process for that. We also adopted, over a year ago, we adopted the standard response protocols. We have also extended that program within our system to move into the standard response or the standard reunification model, which is also sponsored by the same department. And through that, we have been able to create some documents that we can share and provide some training in the event we have a reunification. An additional piece of that is that we now have gone into agreements with 2 different facilities to support us in terms of a reunification situation. That has been a great partnership. I know we have had regularly scheduled safety and security meetings with our safety and security committee. That will continue, and we will be able to share actual plans. What does reunification look like? What does that look like for our transportation department? And we are also we are looking at posing some drills and things that we can work through that process. Obviously, we have worked very closely with the facilities and planning department through some of their bond projects, because we do want to help observe that and identify, are there ways that we can help and support with the training of that as we put film on the campus doors and as we add fencing and other materials to the campuses. So our focus was really to kind of standardize those processes and make sure that we had some very strong foundations in place as we move forward with our district safety and security, and we have seen some positive results to date on that. I now want to talk a little bit about, I guess, our support for the upcoming year. So there's 2 different components here. One which relates directly to our student instructional program. And I know the funding balance there of the $1.6 million, that has to do with the number of library positions that we had within our ESSER funding. And this proposal actually brings in and looks at, if we move those library positions back into the general budget, what that would do to the general budget there. One of the things that we're looking at in trying to increase the efficiency of the use of staff is to help support our reading programs more and to provide instructional resources. Our librarians are master's level educators who have a great depth in terms of supporting reading instruction. They also, as you look at the National Library Standards, they are very closely tied to the instructional technology components that are available. What we'd like to do is take a look at those positions, at revising them more, and even though we keep them on the campus, but having them work more as a district level position to allow us to work directly with the instructional specialists inside the curriculum and instruction department to help push into the classroom to really help support that reading program across the district. Also extending that to the professional development role that is part of the new library standards within the state as well as the national level, and to really help the campus work through those processes of integrating technology. I know one of the things that we did this past year was we really worked with teachers and administrators in tying the technology integration model into the T-test rubric. And what does that look like when we go into the classroom? In terms of the library structures, a lot of the resources that our librarians have and use actually fit directly into that. And to be able to use them more as a stronger professional development presence on the campus and to help utilize those in that way. The next piece has to do with actually kind of trying to standardize what our costs would be for employee devices. So we are about 5 or 6 years into the process. We are in year 5. So we're in the process of revising the 5-year long-range plan, and this would be part of the piece that we are working to put together as we've been working on the long-range plan this last year to begin with next year. But this is actually utilizing our existing funds not seeking to bring in additional funds to the budget, but actually using our existing funds and examining the possibility of a lease program for all staff devices. There are a lot of advantages to this in terms of it is a consistent cost every single year. We are able to standardize what devices our teachers have, what devices our administrators have, what devices our paraprofessionals have, and we know exactly what that cost is going to be every single year. It places us then on a replacement cycle. So the cost that you see there would be a yearly cost that would come out of the existing budgets that we already have. As we look at that and we begin to examine what our replacement should be on a year-to-year basis, we are just under that number if we were to actually replace the number of devices that we needed to each year. And that can sometimes be a little bit more difficult to do when it is not scheduled. So that would be based on a 4-year schedule. So those are some of the pieces that we are looking for as we go into the following school year in terms of major components and major projects that we're looking at to expand the department, as well as continue to standardize and refine some of our purchasing and to utilize the dollars that we do have to support the district in a better way. Does anyone have any questions that we can answer?
I'll open up. Are there any questions for Ms. Stanford?
Were you talking about having employees actually physically go into the classroom and help with reading programs?
Correct, to work with PLC groups and to help to create another resource that resides on the campus to do co-teaching or model teaching or to help with the reading program, maybe be a visiting teacher on the campus and really help in that curriculum development to utilize more of the resources that are available in the library that also tie in with the curriculum that we have within our reading program, but that can also extend into other classrooms. In addition, as we add and we look to add these maker spaces to the classrooms, those are extensions for teachers to come into the library and for librarians to work directly with teachers in terms of how can we utilize some of the resources that are available there to support our students with some hands-on activities that could support reading, that could support social studies and science and so on. But I know one of the major focuses in terms of our academic achievement is really about our reading. And the majority and the library positions that are in question here that had to do with ESSER, those are predominantly our elementary age students, which are our early readers. And to try to build that love for reading amongst our students, but to also provide additional support to the campus instructionally without having to necessarily expand district level resources.
Would it be limited to reading?
No, ma'am, it would not. It could not be. It would not be limited to reading. Reading would just be one of the primary focuses. Like I said, they could certainly provide primary source documents for social studies. The maker spaces are very closely tied to the math and the science because the components that we have added to that deal with art, they deal with science, and they deal with the mathematics. So they absolutely would be able to support all the different areas.
How many employees, if you have an idea, do you have in your department that you feel could move into this?
I currently don't have any in my department. So I guess to answer your question better, currently we have a librarian at all of our campuses except 2 because we have been unable to fill those 2 positions this year. It would be our hope that that would be the same group of teachers or the same group of librarians that would fill those positions. They all have a master's degree, they all have a library science degree, and they already work in many cases in this particular realm, and they are aware of the Texas Library Standards as well as the American Library Standards. And I have worked very closely with Ms. Thompson, who is our lead librarian, in terms of identifying what would this look like if we were to implement it, and also how would it change the job? And she said it really shouldn't change the job. Her hope would be that it would help them to be able to do their job better and hopefully move Judson to a point where we could be recognized as a library model amongst other schools.
Thank you.
Ms. Ryan?
Okay, so part of it is you're talking about really kind of updating their whole position description because we have them doing a lot of stuff like already, right? Like they take care of all instructional materials, they take care of all the Chromebooks, they're like a mini little JTech on their campus, right? In some ways.
Correct. We want to refine that more and make it more of an instructional position versus it being as heavy in that component, yes.
Then who would do those other things?
So there would still be certain responsibilities that would have to kind of fall into that. I mean, instructional materials do fall within our department as well. We're working on some plans to deal with some of the Chromebook aspects of that. I know that's one of the major concerns of that and how we handle that in terms of intake and, moving them out and so on. We would want to work with the campuses in terms of identifying that. Our main goal here is to make sure that we have a system that allows for them to be an instructional support on the campus where they can be in the library if needed, but that they're not tied to the library doing all of the administrative tasks. Obviously, we would still need library inventory. We would still need to handle, those aspects of it, because we certainly don't want to take the librarian components out of the library as much as we want to kind of update the position to match more what is considered the future of libraries as we move to a more digital age, where in many cases, a lot of the alignment has to do with digital citizenship and helping our students understand those components as well.
So how do we line up staffing-wise our problem of having campuses that have 350 students and 850 students? What are you proposing that model kind of look like in terms of elementary support? Because, if we have one librarian on Franz Elementary and they're supporting 350, they can do so much, right? But that same librarian trying to support Copperfield and support 850 students, what are your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts on that is that right now, when we look at it, we're looking at like one librarian to all of the students. What we would hope to do is to create a system where the librarians really begin to work more closely with the teachers, and we begin to build the teachers' capacity to be able to support what resources the libraries offer, and then have the librarians really work directly with those teachers in classrooms and have them scheduled to work maybe in a co-teach position, working with those PLCs in that manner. That way, the one librarian is not necessarily having to serve all the children in that capacity, but we've created a group of instructional leaders on the campus that can utilize those resources better in the classroom. I know there's always the concern of, we have one librarian at Judson High School, they're servicing almost 3,000 students, So the same concept would be there. I mean, ideally, I think in any department that you look at, everyone would hope or would think, this would be great if you could have 3 librarians. But we also know that at the same time, typically the standard model is the librarian there is the instructional leader. And so we want to utilize them more as an instructional leader and help to utilize the other resources on the campus to kind of grow that program versus looking at it from a personnel standpoint.
And essentially eliminate the tagrarian position and banish it forever out of our vocabulary too.
Eliminate the what?
Do we just tagrarian? I think we may only have one of those. But if there's a lot of other
I believe we
duties-
only have one of
Okay,
those, and
that's
that
fine.
was a campus request at the
Yeah.
time. And it was actually a request I know that we questioned. However, ultimately, that became the campus's decision on that. And that's one of the pieces with this, is that we want to make sure that they support what goes on at the campus, but also make sure that we maintain the integrity of what their position really needs to be and where that focus needs to be.
Okay. One question on, safety and security. So we did the fall safety and security committee meeting. We're still pending the spring one, and then there'll be one this summer then, right?
Yes, I believe the spring one is next week, and I believe that was posted today, and I believe it's next Wednesday. So the spring meeting will be next Wednesday, and then we will have another one later in the summer. So we do that quarterly, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I think I would just encourage to, it requires a minimum of 2 parents, and community members and stuff on it, but, people can't always make it to every meeting, and there's only 3 of them a year, and I know there's a lot of parents very concerned about safety and security. So maybe a few more or a couple of alternates, on that committee to make sure, and making sure all areas of the district are represented. I'm sure we can find some parents that can help serve on that and have some input also. All right, thank you, Dr. Gosh.
Ms. Rodriguez.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So what I'm seeing here is that you are actually, it would have like a $250,000 less budget for 2024 than you're expecting, than you had for this past year.
Right, so
You're
the
doing
budgets,
these things for
over
less
the
money.
3 years, the budgets do fluctuate somewhat. And that has to do, so we have a variety of products within our department. So that number does not include any staffing. So that number is just, and that's actually a number that combines two different pieces.
Okay.
So it combines the district technology budget, which when we spoke about the $4 million up above, though, that is the $4 million that was spent out of the district technology fund of that, and on just hardware and software directly related to students. So there's a lot of other components that come out of that district component as well for phones and things that are not included in that particular number.
Okay.
But that is used there. And then there's another portion of that 8 million that is actually just our departmental budget, where we utilize funds in order to renew things that may not be necessarily district-wide things, but they're management components that we
Right.
have within the department to help us manage the cybersecurity components or even manage the network and know when there is a network outage. So because of that, some of those products are on a 3 to 4 year recycle. And so it fluctuates just a little bit depending on what is coming up in that next year. We're trying to make it as stable as possible, which is one of the reasons we are very interested in looking at the lease project for the staff devices, because that does stabilize. We're going to know every year for the next 4 years, this is exactly what it's going to cost us every year in order to have service for our devices, have brand-new devices for everyone, and maintain that. And then when it's over, the company comes in, they collect all the devices, they wipe them for us, they clean them for us, and then they sell them, and we get that back, rolled back into this component to go into the next contract. So it alleviates some of the employment costs that we have in terms of bringing in contract workers to collect those and, get rid of them and that kind of thing. But it does stabilize that piece. Now, most of the fluctuation there comes in the software products, and those do change as we go in. I know this next year, we will be 3 years out from the ransomware, and so we have quite a few of those products that we bought in that year 3 that we will need to renew this year. But I do not anticipate it to exceed any of the 3 numbers that you have there, even though it may fluctuate slightly.
Got it. So the things that you've put on here is like priorities.
These are
and
priorities,
They're not
yes, ma'am.
necessarily like new things that are impacting the budget. This is just like new strategies that you're pursuing.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, got it.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
And for the record, Ms. Eaton arrived at 3:37, so we have that in there. Are there any other questions? I have a couple, but I want to make sure. Ms. Faulkner?
So I heard you say that, well, I'm just going to point blank ask, will the librarians, what will the new position be titled exactly?
I'd like to say, I think this is just a proposal. We would never
Correct.
come to the board and ask
Okay.
for anything unless it goes through teaching and learning first. This was just a proposal from the technology department of what they were looking at going forward.
is correct.
But we'd have to sit down with Dr. Saunders and Dr. Toppin before we made an official recommendation of what we were going to do going forward. So this isn't, hey, we need another person so that, because a lot of the librarians work in a special at the elementary schools. There's a couple that don't, but most do. So if we were to take them out of that position, then who's going to work that special
Right.
when they go through? So that's something we'd have to work out from a teaching and learning component before we move forward.
Yes.
Well, and ultimately, my question was, if we do the restructure and it's renamed, are we automatically going to roll these librarians over, or do they have to apply for their job and hope, cross their fingers that they get this new position?
As we go forward in the budget cycle, along with the academic enrichment teachers and the librarians, we're going to come to the board and ask how we move forward in terms of their positions. It would be my recommendation, I'll just go ahead and put it out there, that we just bring them from the ESSER budget back onto the local budget. I think that we can do that seamlessly, but I don't think that we have to have them re-interview for those positions. We just move them onto the local budgets.
Good, that's what I was leaning towards. Thank you.
And then, Ms. Rodriguez, I'd also like to clarify that on the budgets, you're going to find that one of the efficiencies as Ms. Ryan puts it, as we're going to recommend going forward, is that we look at all of our local budgets and see if we can decrease those by 10% across the board. Some people have been able to do more. Some people have not been able to do that at all because they've already exhausted their budgets, and we're not even to the end of the pay cycle yet. So.
I'd like to add that a number of questions were asked by Ms. Rodriguez, Ms. Ryan, and Ms. Stanford before I got there, and Ms. Faulkner, good question. So I was coming at the end and try to ask something unless something's burning, but there are two really burning questions that I have. One is a little bit of an understanding of the refresh for students and their technology piece. And so my concern is the sustainability of that. We're buying a lot of them. I guess more specifically even to address the part where we're losing laptops, where they're not coming back. And can you talk a little bit about how we're handling that?
Sure. So currently we're handling that in terms of we're working with vendors to actually have the devices that we have repaired. So we do keep on constant watch on that, in terms of bringing devices in, having them repaired, and recycling them back through. We currently do still have enough devices to exceed the numbers of students that we do have swap outs, and we have other components there. I know in terms of looking at the lease for the staff members, that has to do with the kind of the age. Most of our student devices, we have at least 1 to 2 more years left in terms of those devices before they expire in terms of their terms of life. And so we've actually been looking at a similar component for that to try to stabilize that cost as well and bring that to you in terms of looking at the potential of maybe leasing those devices to help kind of cover all of those components. So that would be something that because we have definitely been looking at how do we sustain this and what does this look like. So far in terms of sustainability and cost of it, it does seem that a lease program may be the best, but we have just started kind of looking at how we sustain that over time. Currently, we've been able to sustain it through grant funds and through, just district funds in terms of replacing the devices based on what is being budgeted.
Okay. Ms. Ryan likes to use the word efficiency. I've always used the return on investment. Same end, right? Same thing. And so in terms of the ROI on an academic sense, are we being able to show that the technology piece is actually improving grade level performance in the classroom? Or do we need to also have a hybrid of books? And I only say that because maybe it alleviates the cost, because when you bring it up in the next year or two, it's a big cost for these computers. Should we be looking at that? I know we went, because of ESSER funding, we went and bought all these computers, but is there any thought process behind that?
We actually currently run a hybrid component of that. All of our textbooks are digital, but then we also still do purchase some of the print materials that are available for certain programs, especially at certain grade levels. And so that is part of our IMA funding and the sustainability of that component. So we already have that kind of a hybrid model there. In terms of the ROI on that, in many cases, I think that comes out in terms of looking at how our academic performance, how our students perform academically, and the way in which we utilize our resources through the curriculum that has been developed across the district. So it is a support and it is a resource in the same way that the traditional paper pencil is, and we try to utilize those in conjunction. That's one of the reasons we aligned when I mentioned we have the technology integration matrix, and we aligned that with the T-tests so that we can identify, and that is something that we've really started to align and just begun training on this year. When we go in, how can we measure that? When we look at what are we looking for? And some of that is a training component for many folks, in terms of looking at it, are we using it in the most effective way? And what does that look like on the other side when we get into our academic achievement?
More than a support or a resource, it's a requirement for testing.
It is a
as we
requirement
move
for
forward.
testing.
So we can't afford not to have a one-to-one component and still be able to do our STAR testing.
And it also is important that the students, so our benchmark testing is done online. We deliver all of our unit assessments through Eduphoria online, and we also have our NWEA map testing as well as Amplify. And all of those components are done online, and so I think you find your results when you start looking at that component, because without those devices in the one-to-one environment, we really lose the capability of that, and then our students, because test taking on a computer is very different from test taking on paper. And so with the inability to even test on paper going forward, it is important that we maintain that component to allow our students the practice and the experience of learning to test in that capacity as they go through and as the curriculum increases.
And I assume that we're not given more funding to acquire computers, are we? Are we getting funding from the state in some capacity to kind of ensure that we can offer computers to everyone for state testing and all that?
The state
No,
testing
right.
mandate is one of those lovely unfunded mandates by the
Exactly,
state,
yeah.
and we recognize that. And that's one of the reasons that we're looking at alternatives to just continuing to, kind of replace. How can we do this more effectively so that we can better tell the board and the community, this is what we need? We can also then advocate. I know I do fill out information for the state on a regular basis in terms of what the costs are for this. And anytime we have the opportunity to get funding from the state through grants or whatnot, we do actually, and that's the way we actually did it last time. We were able to get funding through E-rate for that, through the ECF funds and through some of the other funds that were out there, and that is actually how we did our last refresh for our students. So we are continuing to look at those options as well.
And my last question is related to librarians. And so we have experts in the librarian field that all
Absolutely.
have graduate degrees. And I don't know, do you work closely with campus leadership in integrating librarians to impact, again, curriculum, to impact student success? Is there sort of, I know you're handling it because they're under your supervision in a sense, but what type of collaborative has been happening at the campus level to ensure that we're integrating that?
So the librarians have not had a huge hand in the integration component of that so much as just the standard library components of that. And each one is used differently on each one of the campuses as they work directly with their principal. I know our instructional technology department has worked very closely with them. We've brought them into our department in many cases through the instructional technology side to kind of build their capacity and to begin working in that direction, especially when it comes to digital citizenship. The large part of that, we have the oversight to try to maintain the consistency of the program currently, but we don't actually, the librarians are actually monitored and directed based on, the campus improvement plan as well as the direction of the principal, more so than they are by our department. So our department provides consistent staff development, consistent opportunities, and we also try to make sure that the resources that they have are consistent across the board. And that's one of the things that, as we look at moving them back to ESSER, if we can utilize them more to help support both sides so that that working relationship gets stronger. That's kind of what we were proposing with that. But again, as Dr. Field said, we were just looking at what does this look like if we actually when we bring them back to the local budget, and how can we make sure that those dollars are being used effectively?
Thank you. Ms. Heaton.
Oh, God.
I got you.
Thank you, Dr. Gosh. I just have a couple of things. Is there a part of, well, actually, I don't want to ask you that out loud. Okay, how does how is our firewall affected by those tablets that the students have? Because I noticed that there's a couple of things that we as board members, I know for me, have tried to do. And, I had to come and visit your office because I get the big red restricted, So how is it with the
I'm
kids?
going to allow Mr. Fields to answer that question.
So by law, we have to make sure that students can't get to things that are pornographic or hate related. And so that's what that big red screen is either it is pornographic, it's adult content, or it's hate related.
No, I can assure you what I was trying to get to. Wasn't none of that. In fact, it was a TASB site.
Yeah, so the other part of this,
Board member.
I know.
it's called TASB.
Yeah, exactly. We should call TASB.
The other part of this is we also do not allow websites through if they aren't known. So if they haven't been categorized before, you're going to get that big red screen. That's what you got. You got a screen that somebody hadn't visited before, and so it comes up as it's called a non-managed site.
It took 5 adults.
I would say, Ms. Eaton, to break that down a little bit, there are ways in which once you get out to particular sites, if you go through Google or something like that, there's ways to get to sites they may not want you to go to.
It was when I had to come up here and
I remember.
5 of y'all had to.
It happens to me almost daily, because I'll just go in to check something that
Yeah.
someone sent in and a red screen will come up.
Okay, 'cause I got
But we're
one
just trying
right
to
now.
firewall it to keep the students safe.
I'm not that worried about it. It's
I think the easy way to identify that is if it is a website, even if it has an ad on it, on that particular day, and the ad is questionable, it will block the site for a particular point of time because that ad is on there.
Okay.
And also, like what he was saying, websites are kind of put into categorical buckets, like this is educational, this is professional, this is travel. If it doesn't have that label on it, it's going to give you the red screen because it doesn't recognize how it's filed on the filing cabinet. I guess would be a good way to
Hey,
kind of explain
I
that.
love what you guys have done, because I just happened to kind of walk into a situation one day where a student was making a claim about something concerning a teacher, and it turned out it was all discombobulated, didn't even involve the gender, the nothing. And I was like, oh man, our technology department is on top of it, because kids don't seem to understand that you sitting there and you just typing away, you can cost somebody their job, and their certificate. So I'm just glad and grateful that you guys have everything set up the way you do. I don't mind the red screen, I just come up here. But thank you.
In addition, really quick, in addition to that same program also helps us to look for students that we send to counseling for mental health issues.
Yes.
Or threats, things
'Cause
like that you're talking about.
It's going to be a requirement. But when we're done, that other question, I have it written down. I will need to ask you. And the only reason I'm not going to ask it out loud is because I don't need everyone to know that. Okay?
Not a problem.
Because
We'll be happy to
it
answer.
helps protect y'all. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Ryan.
Yes, I think you're referring to Lighthouse, right? Or Gaggle, is that what it is?
Gaggle.
They
We
were
were talking
Gaggle,
about
that's
Gaggle.
fine. Yes, I will say that it works really well I'm gonna call my own daughter out, who got called down to the office this week for looking up how to dig up body parts and dismember them from a graveyard, and, no. It was the mock trial on Frankenstein. Oh, okay. So the system works, and it worked perfectly, and that's what they were working on, and her team won the mock trial. Thank you, Mr. Hartman, for judging. But it was great that, I'm like, did you get called down the same day that you, were Googling it? She's like, yeah, when I was Googling it, I literally got called immediately down. So I'm glad that is working, and it's working very real time, and the counselors are getting alerted, and we are looking into that stuff. So yeah, we have some great technology, that exists. So thank you for everything y'all are doing, but my daughter's fine.
Well, thank you, Dr. Gosh. Appreciate it. Dr. Fields?
Yes, sir. Next up, sorry. Yes, sir. Next up is police. So I would ask as we go through this, I know we have several different departments to go through, but for the cabinet members and for those in the audience that are going to come up and brief as well, the board members have been supplied with all of the program review documents. So if we could just give a cursory overview of what we cover and what our plans are going forward and move to the questions part quicker, I would truly appreciate that, because I know that they've read through these already.
All right, ready? All right. Good evening, Board President and board members, Cabinet, Dr. Fields, staff members, officers. My name is Chief Ramon. I'm here to give the program review about our Judson ISD Police Department. We provide a safe and secure environment of 56 square miles across Bexar County. We service over 24,000 students and about 3,000 plus staff members. One of the things that we would like to bring up before we start our program review, there are certain things that we've been talking to the board, and it was to increase personnel due to safety and to meet mandates. As we have moved forward with hiring officers, we have only 5 vacant positions. We currently have 6 elementary supporting officers that are here with us today. We are actively recruiting, and until we continue to have all our patrol officers split between elementary campuses, which is 1 for every 2 campuses that are left on the elementary sectors. I can assure you that all our schools are receiving police support whenever needed. In addition, with working with safety and security team, we know that one of the things that came up was audits, our favorite word, audits. Our surrounding districts in terms of how many school districts had completed the lockdown drills last year. And although we were assured that we had met those expectations, after reviewing, it was discovered that a few school lockdowns were not completed. As of yesterday, as Dr. Gosh said, we have completed all our elementary and secondary lockdown drills for the school year, officially, documented, etc. As we get into some of the key strategies, providing 2 officers at every high school, 1 at each middle school. We are working on trying to provide 1 officer at every elementary school, as well as I spoke to you a little earlier about that. Now, House Bill 3 mandates that a police officer will be at every elementary school. However, the district is able to write a waiver, an exemption for the exception, to be in compliance. We will make sure that we have support in every area. Some of the things that we have acquired through grants and bonds are bulletproof vests, increase in radios, laptops, shields, breaching tools, department-issued service weapons, and including training. We really improved the level of service that we're able to provide through bonds and grants, and then our general operating fund. As you can see, in 21-22 school year, it was about 1.3 million, almost 1.9 in 22-23, and then in 23-24, 2.4 million. In results today, we're approximately 33 officers out of 38 with 5 openings. Currently, we have 6 elementary support officers in the following locations: Candlewood, Escondido, Hartman/Park Village, because of the proximity in the neighborhood, Masters, Salinas, and Wortham. Fortunately, we're able to assign police officers based on increasing numbers of police officers. We currently have 2 elementary support officers in a field training program, and they will currently be assigned to Millers Point and Copperfield Elementary. If I can just have my elementary support officers stand up so our board members and cabinet and Dr. Fields can see who you are. These are our elementary support officers. And we appreciate, let me tell you what, our principals appreciate our officers. Thank you. So some of the requested support that we could use going forward is our police telecommunications operations dispatcher. We received service calls in 21-22, about 2,000 plus calls. In 22-23, we received about 5,000 plus calls. In 23-24, currently about 6,000 plus calls. We like to change the job description from secretary dispatcher to dispatcher because it's a highly skilled position that we need to have a person qualified for the respect of JISD safety and student safety. Currently, our secretary is performing that function. It would be a tremendous assistance as our calls for service have increased, and we all know that seconds count. That would mean that we would need to create a new position under police pay grade 100 under the new compensation plan. The increase would be an estimated cost about 3,000 plus. We have referred to what type of efficiencies we are prepared to offer. We know that finance is probably going to ask us to decrease our budgets about 10%. We overlooked our police budget, and we could do anywhere between 11 to 12%. Saving some money, we could probably take 1% of that funding that we're asking you for that communications dispatcher. We thank you for your consideration. I am here if you have any questions to ask of me.
Ms. Faulkner?
So on the proposed new position, are we talking separating them into 2
Yes,
positions?
ma'am.
So instead of making one, okay. The other question is, if we have a dispatcher, obviously it's not going to be full-time. Do we have an MOU with another agency for
So-
dispatching?
Yes, ma'am. So we have 7 MOUs with the entities around Judson ISD. But our dispatcher is fully needed for 8 hours of the day between 8 and 5 p.m. because of school, elementary events, et cetera, still going on during the day. So it's a very important position. We are trying to move forward, and we hope that the position is accepted.
Are there any other questions? Ms. Danford? Ms. Ryan?
Just to clarify, are you saying you want to change the secretary's job description, or you want to add another position to that position?
So what it is, it's secretary/dispatcher, but dispatcher was never provided its own job description. So it would be a new position as just dispatcher. We still have our secretary, but we need the dispatcher's position.
Dispatcher. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Ryan?
What strategies are we looking at to get fully in compliance with House Bill 3? You know, the board granted a temporary exemption for a year, and that'll expire in August. When we look at funding for next year, that needs to be, you know, what next year is going to look like for us in terms of House Bill 3, which wants someone on every elementary campus, not sharing an officer or anything like that. So are we, I mean, hiring enough to get one per campus? It's been hard enough to just get as many as you have here, and we're very happy they're here, and bring all your friends. But fully manning that, are we looking at some other, and some of the other alternatives are less expensive. Other surrounding districts, we've seen them now execute contracts with their local police departments, with security companies, hiring marshals, you know, retired military personnel or resource officers. Are we looking into some other less costly than a police officer alternatives in order to get us into full compliance with House Bill 3 for next year?
So what we've heard through legislative talk is that they may be changing some guidelines. And so we're kind of waiting to see what they're going to say. Maybe they'll decrease the number, maybe the ratio number. We are not sure. So I can't provide you that information, but I can tell you that we have our patrol division for the schools that we have left that do not have a officer on campus, that we have a 1-to-2 ratio. So one officer for every 2 campuses that are left without an officer.
If I could add, one of the things that we did when we first got to this point is TEA came down and they said, how are we going to address this? And what we sent back to TEA is that we were unable to meet that mandate along with most of the other districts in the state of Texas. But we also, the board said, go hire the people. So we've tried diligently to get the police officers in. There's a lot, it's not like people just walk in with T-class certifications. You gotta jump through some hoops to get that done. So we're working diligently on getting it done, but we are in compliance right
Yes,
now
sir.
with what we said we were gonna do. In addition, when it comes to the placement of the police officers, we really looked at distance away from the core. Like Wortham Oaks is one of those campuses that has one assigned, and some of the other places where we saw frequent calls for police officers, we posted police officers there. In the areas where we didn't, we have someone in the car ready to go to either one, and their requirement is every other hour to visit each of the campuses, so no one's really left unattended. But we're working real hard on getting the other 5 and getting them in. I know we have 2 people in training right now in a couple of schools that will then be able to go out and fill some of those campuses, in part of the 5 remaining positions.
Yeah, and then I think there's still going to be another 10 or so 10 or so positions in order to meet. Well, yes, because one every other campus is not full compliance with House Bill 3.
No, we're not that way.
We've exempted ourselves from House Bill 3 temporarily. It says during regular school hours, there has to be an armed person present. That's on TASB's most recent update. There is no, like, that is still the guidance. It has to be during regular school hours and armed person.
Exactly, but when we hire these next 5 people, we'll be
Done.
full, complete. Yes.
No.
Yes.
We'll have 10 of our schools that.
Right?
Yes.
It'll only be every other. That's not 20 elementary officers. When she gets 5 more, that'll bring her to
10 elementary support officers.
10 elementary support officers. She's going to need 21.
But we
To have
already
one.
have other people, right?
We have other people that are wanting to move.
That are moving to that.
Yes. To a different calendar.
So if we hire these 5, how many others do we need still?
So right now,
For
we
one person
have,
at every elementary
One on
campus,
every
'cause we
single
were
campus
informed
all
that
day.
the 10 would take us to having someone at every campus.
no, it's 10 elementaries with still the support of the patrol division. We're still trying to hire 5 more officers, which will give us, at that time, probably about 16 total, still leaving us with a few open positions on the elementary schools. But right now, we were set only for 10 positions. I mean, 10 positions on 187 elementary schools.
Yeah,
10
and we need
positions on
21 to
187,
get
but
to
we
one
were
per
talking
campus.
about the personnel. Before, the way that this used to work is we had one police officer that kind of went between two schools.
Correct.
And that was 20 elementary, so that's 10 police officers that go to two schools.
Yeah, and that was our
Then we
interim fix.
gave permission to hire 10 more.
We've only hired 10, so we have a total of 33 now,
But we created 10 more positions.
but we haven't filled all those positions.
I understand, that's why Ms. Canoyer is saying, once we fill those 10,
Then we'll be in compliance.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just doing the math. I'm like, we have 6, you have 2 in training, that's 8, we have 20 elementary schools. So that's where I get confused. To me, that looks like 12 more, and plus the new elementary will be,
But we already have some people that will
Yeah,
then
that's what I'm
move
saying. We
into the
have-
one
okay.
there.
I guess I'm confused, because it says we have 6, and this is the campuses they're on. We have 2 in training, that's
But-
8.
But we have those patrol people that can do the job as well.
That are not assigned to any school at all?
They're doing the 1 to 2 right
They're doing the
now.
1 to 2 ratio right now. Those are patrol officers.
So we still have those patrol officers that then can cover the campus.
Okay, so bottom line is she has authorization to hire, to have
Yes.
one for
Yes.
every single school, every hour that we're in instructional hours.
once we get everybody, sorry,
Once we get.
Right.
once we get everyone hired.
Correct, yes,
ma'am.
sir.
Okay, we're just going to keep hiring until there is one
Exactly, and
campus all day
and I think
on every
Chief is doing a
elementary.
great job of getting, look at how many she's gotten already since August.
Oh, I agree. It's very hard to
So
hire
I think it's going to be,
this kind
I
of
think we're going to be there by
Yes.
August.
Okay, I just want to make sure she had the authorization that, to continue to hire until we have one at every single campus. Thank you.
Ms. Eaton?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Chief, okay, great job, thank you. How are we doing with the vehicles? Because I know, okay, we get ready to talk about that, right? Because as we hire, I know we also got to look at the vehicles, equipment, the weapons, ammunition,
Yes, ma'am. So
That's
so
my
far,
military side.
our grants department did an amazing job getting us some grant money. And so right now, we're good with equipment. We won't have to ask for equipment right now. As far as vehicles, well, we were trying to take baby steps. And so our elementary campuses do not have vehicles on there, and we didn't plan on putting vehicles on the campus. Does it, show presence? Absolutely, knowing that there's a police vehicle there, but we're not going to go there right now because of funding, budget issues. But at the elementaries, no patrol vehicles whatsoever. So we're trying to make ends meet right now.
I think,
will you let us know? I know you're not asking for it right now, but could you, when you get a chance, do some type of schematic to let us know what to expect so we can start looking at it?
Yes, ma'am.
And that also helps with grants and,
We will
moving
look at a
forward.
vehicle replacement plan, and we'll provide that to Dr. Fields.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Chief.
I think the most important thing to note from Chief's presentation is that she's requesting a dispatcher, but through her efficiency decrease in her annual budget, it pays for the position. So that's going to come up in the budget cycle. We just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware. Any other questions?
Yes, I do appreciate the spirited conversation. Thank you. But Chief Ramon, thank you for the hard work. Even before we had a House Bill 3, we added more police officers, so we know the importance of that. And we knew back then it was a challenge to get those filled. So I do appreciate your attention to keeping our students and employees safe. My questions are about simpler things, but yet have an impact. Part of Judson falls in with the San Antonio area, and so there are crossing guards that are part of San Antonio. I drove by Elof Elementary School last week, and there were parent volunteers with stop signs playing, being in a role of crossing guards, which I thought was phenomenal. So crossing guards, obviously, I think we need them. So I don't know if the police department is working with our campus leadership to ensure that all campuses have some sort of parent support during that time or can acquire crossing guards from the city of San Antonio. Is that an active initiative?
So what I can tell you right now, we have our expert over here, recently promoted Sergeant Rife, and he's the expert in that crossing guard program for the state of Texas, which only also certifies our staff members. We can't certify our volunteers because they're not covered by the district. They're not protected by the district. And so Sergeant Rife has numbers. He provides a special little certification ID card for each staff member that attends that training. And it's about a 4 to 5 hour training that allows them to get it in the street, cross those students, use their stop signs, make sure that they have their yellow vest on, et cetera. So that's been a great help because we don't have very many
Is it across the district already, or is it?
We have it at every campus, and anybody that needs the training, all they do is send Sergeant Rife an email, and they request the training, and he goes to that campus, and he notifies everybody across the district so that they can attend the training.
Okay. I think that's great. And just so you know, they could have been employees. I said volunteers, but I didn't get out of my truck and find out, hey, are you an employee or a volunteer? So I appreciate that clarity. We've identified that. So I do appreciate that. And then lastly, is there anything that we at the board can do in terms of working with our different council members and all the different municipalities in terms of ensuring that we have the strongest commitment of police and services? Is it all handled well, or, I mean, what is your thoughts?
It's being handled very well with the emails and with the Director of Safety, Mr. Frank Garcia, sending out emails to not only the city council, but the chiefs and involving everybody to let them know that we have lockdown drills, sheltering drills. They're allowed to come to our facilities to use training as long as there's no summer school or campus activities going on. So we welcome them all the time.
And I guess my last question would be, I was approached by another city leader, and I won't call him out here because this is a problem across the district potentially, but students misbehaving after school hours in certain environments. And so you used to do the DARE program. Is it still?
Great program.
Great. So are we still doing that program?
No, sir, it was just due to staffing and the needs of our presence on different campuses.
Sure. I realize that we're spread thin. But the idea is that trying to reach out to support our students, because we can identify who these students are if they're doing mischief out in the community, if they're stealing from a store and all that. And we don't want to be punitive, but I certainly feel that if we have an active relationship with officials, that we can identify students that might need more assistance and more support. So when they're on campus, we can give that. I don't know if there's an active initiative that way, but I would imagine if there's criminal activity like vandalism or anything related to that, there needs to be a way for us to finally kind of catch those students and help them. And that's, again, from an official that I've heard that they have caught students doing things like that. So are you aware of that, or is it something that's on your radar?
We are, and I can tell you that probably next month, we have some stakeholders here in the district that we'll be contacting to introduce a restorative justice program for first-time offenders, especially with vaping. And we'll be introducing that once the budget settles down, and then we'll bring it to Dr. Fields' attention and cabinet so they can review, and we can get an MOU signed by Bexar County Juvenile Justice. And I think it'll be an excellent program that we will like to introduce and approved hopefully by everyone.
And again, I bring back what we can do, because I'll be meeting with Bexar County and Judge Sakai, and we've had discussions about Bexar County offering more assistance and supporting students. We don't want them to go through the juvenile system if we can help them before that becomes an issue. But we see red flags, and so I feel that there's room for us maybe to support some of these students and families.
Yes, sir. I can tell you, I'll just put a bug in everybody's ear. The program will be hosted by Officer Melissa Arredondo, and it's going to be called We Rise, and it'll be a restorative justice program, and I think everybody's going to like it.
Okay. Well, thank you. Any other questions, any comments? Ms. Knoyer?
So, Mr. Macias, I think that once we get our staffing settled and we have one officer at every campus, we might be able to look at bringing back some of these programs at elementary to help set them on the right way then. Because there will be one person at the campus, they'll get to know the students, they'll be able to offer maybe a class as part of specials or something like that. So, I think there are lots of things that we can look forward to once we have our staffing settled.
And I appreciate that. And of course, I'm not against putting more funding and finding a nonprofit partner, finding some other entity that can do it in the short run, because we have other priorities too. So it's hard, right? And so we need to do something in the interim, but I'm just open to that. Thank you for that. I don't think there are any other questions. Thank you so much.
Well, next up is Human Resources. I'd ask them to come up. And again, we know that you guys have received the overview, so we'll be moving to questions a little bit quicker as we move forward.
Good evening. I'm here to introduce some people from our Human Resources and Employee Services Department to share a little bit on the strategies for recruitment, retainment, leadership development, and also for employee benefits. Our main goal is to strengthen the educational experiences of students and also enhance the quality of life for our employees. So first, I'd like to introduce Dr. Destiny Barrera. She is the Director of Leadership Development housed in our Human Resources Department.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our recruitment and retainment efforts, and then also talk about some leadership development. So we are always thinking about creative ways on how to recruit quality employees. We designed the Tour of Texas this year by targeting universities from different regions to recruit educators from diverse campuses for our students for hard-to-fill positions. For example, our first stop was at Prairie View A&M University, and next week we're going to be in the Rio Grande Valley area universities. We are also working to continue our support with DOI teachers by making sure that we grow them the best quality educational programming that we can do here for them to support them in the classroom to be great leaders for us. We are also hosting, which is very exciting for us, we are also hosting a employee transfer fair to ensure our employees have an opportunity to explore other options without leaving the district. So we're very excited about that. That'll be coming up on April 15th. Transitioning to leadership development, we are building leadership capacity within our existing employees and also building a bench of ready leaders. For the past 5 years, we've had a partnership with the Holdsworth Center. We currently have 6 campuses that are participating in their campus leadership programming. We also have a partnership with Texas A&M San Antonio, and we have offered that to our employees who would like to work on obtaining their master's degree. So we're excited that that partnership is extended to this year too, and we'll be getting a new group of people joining that. Some other leadership programming that we have that we started that was new for this year, along with our other administrative cohorts, was a new assistant principal cohort. This is focusing on new assistant principals, first-year assistant principals, and giving them the foundational skills that they would need for leadership. I also collaborate with other departments to ensure that they get those kind of foundational skills to be potential future leaders, future principals on campuses. We also have 2 great in-house programming here. We have our Judson Leadership Institute, which is for aspiring leaders within the district. And what's exciting about that is in the past 3 years, we have had 15 people who are now currently in leadership positions across the district. We also have our Judson JP3 program. It stands for Judson Principal Preparatory Program. That is for current assistant principals who aspire to be principals. I'm happy to say that we have 10 people in positions in our district who are current principals and or associate principals who have gone through that programming with me. We also have one more last thing to add to that too is just really talking about how we're always trying to promote our programs and being able to strengthen our leadership skills. I do also want to give a special shout out to the communications team. They have really worked closely with me on creating this Tour of Texas and also enhancing and improving our marketing strategies that we have so we can showcase the Judson experience to bring great people into Judson and see all the great things that we're doing. Thank you so much, and I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Roberts, who will talk about employee services.
Good afternoon, Board President, board members, Dr. Fields, and Cabinet. As Dr. Tagenod mentioned earlier about enhancing the quality of life for our employees, we've made some drastic increases to the services that we provide our employees this past year. One is that we've increased the number of mental health sessions that they are able to participate in. And this is to all of our full-time employees as well as their families. They do not have to be on one of the Judson medical plans to participate in that employee assistance program. And there is a network of counselors. Those counselors also include bilingual counselors as well. Another benefit in which we attribute tremendous success this year is the Next Level Urgent Primary Care Clinic. Employees on our self-funded medical plans can attend one of those clinics at one of the 8 locations at zero cost to them, as opposed to going to their own doctor and paying a copay or going to an urgent care facility and spending a $100 copay. Through the pharmacy benefit partnership we have with HEB, there is zero cost to generic medications, and there's a direct assistance is offered for specialty medications as well. And then lastly, we are offering the diabetes awareness program this year. I'm very pleased to say we have received wonderful feedback about these new insurance implementation programs, and the employees are very happy with these enhancement benefits. So thank you, and I'm going to turn it over for support for Dr. Tagenod to finish up with.
Thanks, Ms. Roberts. So in continuing on building capacity within our staff, we are looking into beginning a partnership to support paraprofessionals with attaining their degrees and possibly their teaching certificates. So just something that we are moving forward with Region 20 to build capacity in consideration for all of staff, and then also eventually hope to hire them and keep them in the Judson ISD family as teachers as well. There would be no cost for the partnership. However, there may be costs associated with specific professional development that they may need, but we would look for other funding types in order to support that. Just want to review historical budgets. I have the last 2 budgets there. To note for the HR revised budget, the increase to the 446, there was a payment that we needed about $191,000 for the TASB risk management for unemployment compensation coverage, and that's why you see that large increase from the previous year. As well as the employee services budget, you could see that there was a significant increase too from the prior year. That was a board-approved position. We were having a lot of reports and requests from our employees for mental health services. And at the time, we only had 2 providers, and so we were seeking for more funding so that we can contract with additional providers. And so that's why we had an increase of about $100,000 into the employee services budget. When we're speaking about efficiencies, especially during our budgets and looking at our expenditures, we can say that for HR, we would be able to function and have a decrease in our budget by about 15%. For employee services, we can decrease by about 26%. Just want to and that is mostly for the employee services. The large percentage that we're able to increase is because of our new employee assistance program. Through our new benefits plan, we're able to service more people with this network of providers versus having to continuously contract more providers out and then taking money out of our budget. So we're able to create some efficiencies in that area because of that. So we may be asking for a reclassification during the budget process for 1 employee in that particular department. However, it would be that cost to reclassify that particular employee would be covered in the about 6% reduction that we would be proposing to reduce our budget with. And we stand ready to answer any questions, ladies.
Who would like to go first? I'll ask Dr. Tagenol. Customer service. So the biggest, one of, not the biggest, there's a lot of, challenges, but you guys do very well for the team you have. But the customer service in terms of addressing employee calls has been pretty consistent. HR doesn't get back with us and that kind of stuff that I hear out there. A recommendation, and by no means you have to follow it, but it'd be interesting to know who's calling, what are the reasons the calls are coming, and if there's somebody that can be hired that just kind of fields the calls and says, hey, you guys are getting 20 calls on this topic. And just, I mean, we use Lighthouse to do services for our fraud and abuse number, and it's a minimal cost for that because all they do is answer the call. But it's a live person. And so just the thought process, what kind of calls are we getting? What kind of support do we need to add so that employees get a response sooner rather than later? And how can we possibly augment HR to meet that need? We want happy employees, and we want them to be heard. And I'm sure that HR wants to answer their questions too, so it goes both ways. But we need to give you those resources to do it. So I just wanted to put it out there and see if you have a response or a thought.
We certainly appreciate that recommendation, and you are right. We do already utilize a tool through Lighthouse for our anonymous reporting system. It's a minimal cost yearly, and so we can definitely look into what other services that they provide for that type of a service. I will just mention that yes, we are aware of many of the challenges that our employees are concerned of, and we do have regular meetings to address those concerns and have plans on a weekly basis on how we can more efficiently address concerns, and going back to our whys and our purpose for the district and our vision, and we are moving forward and trying to improve our processes to ensure that we address employee concerns and needs.
All right, I'll yield for right now. Ms. Eaton.
Mic check. Dr. Taganoff, I have a question. If an employee has a situation occur on a campus, is there, to them personally, is there someone in HR that they can contact to express their concern if there's no one available there on the campus for them to speak to about it?
They could contact the Human Resources Department, and any of us could provide support. However, we do have an employee relations specialist that works specifically with concerns, and so she would be the one that we would direct those calls to, and then she would be able to either provide guidance or pass that call over to somebody else who can address it.
And she's located in HR?
Yes, ma'am.
And employees are told this when? At what point in the employment process?
I believe that when we do onboarding for our employees, we do have an employee welcome guide that lists the staff of our employees that describes their functions.
Okay, thank you.
And then it's also available on our website.
Ms. Ryan?
Have you guys been able to get Higginbotham in yet to do an analysis for the third-party employee benefits provider? That's the new co-op with We Go Public.
Yes.
Because they service over 500 of the 1,000 school districts in Texas. So the level of economic savings they have provided to school districts and to provide a one-stop shop for all employee benefits on one app. They bid out life insurance at 40 cents per whatever it is, I don't even know, but apparently 40 cents is low. I don't know, I don't get any benefits from the district type thing, but if over 500 districts have gone to them because of cost savings, that may be a great integrated platform. It doesn't mean you have to change your medical, it doesn't mean we have to change all of our providers, it's the administration of it. So I'll resend you We Go Public and their contact info, because it's on a purchasing co-op already. It's already been bid out. So I'll have Lisa send you or you can get Lisa to send you the local.
I think we typically look at this, Ms. Ryan, every other year. And this is the first implementation of the year where we just looked at it and went with this new company. And
So what we've been doing is bidding out every little section. So individually, this company does it all for you.
And that's why when we relook at this again after this year, then we'll make sure that we bring in that company and say, hey, is there a better way of doing this? Do we not need to do it individually? But again,
because I think we're always going to be, the issue is you're going to keep bringing parts of this over the next year. Like there's something on the board meeting for an employee assistance plan, like all these things
Unless
come up.
we consolidate.
And so from what they said at the Go Public meeting, you know, they start and then as they roll things into your benefits, like as your next thing becomes expired,
Right.
then they'll go bid out life insurance and see if they can find you a better life insurance. They don't have to take over your life insurance on day one. So probably just worth a conversation just to see what they offer and what their rollout, because we might be able to get some efficiencies and some better customer service in terms of there's just one place to look for everything, not 47 things on a piece of
And
paper.
if I can respond to, Ms. Roberts has regular meetings with her insurance committee. We just had a meeting this month before spring break, and so she's starting those back up again so that we can start looking at different options for next time we roll over into our benefits plan. For our TPA, though, I think we just reinstated with our current one, and we've got like a year and a half or 2 years left with them, or 3 years. Okay. So we will definitely look at different ways to become more efficient through those committee meetings, and they provide feedback all year long.
Okay. And then some questions about our professional development programs, because I think there's a lot of us on this board that get a lot of phone calls about this, especially over the course of the last year, in terms of the true return on investment of JLI and JP3, because we're seeing less and less people hired out of these programs, you know, this year, and a lot of frustration, I think, from some of the people in the program. You know, we had 2 high school assistant principal positions open, and we didn't find anybody to hire out of either of those. You know, we are appointing people into positions without giving them a chance to interview for them, so they're kind of wondering what the benefit is to them. They don't feel like they have a clear road path, you know, in terms of advancement type thing. So if we're gonna, you know, hire from outside the district or from outside of this program, I think it'd be nice to get some more input from the participants, maybe in a very anonymous format, just to feel how they feel about this program, because I know over this school year, there's been a lot of frustrations with it.
So I know that Dr. Barrera is constantly asking for feedback from her participants, and I do see that we have had participants from each of those cohorts be promoted into higher leadership positions after having gone through those programs. And we can certainly ask for more feedback, and we can certainly revamp some of those things, but we have been actively working on a transparent way to be able to provide leadership support and growth and have a bench of ready leaders to be able to move into positions.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Tagenall. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Yes, sir. So next up is the athletics department. So Mr. Brooks, Coach Corrales, if you would go ahead and
Good afternoon, Board President, Board members, Dr. Fields. I'm going to do warp speed since we want to get to the questions. So I know that you have the program review for the athletics department. As you can see, for students as far as all 3 of the grade levels, elementary, middle, and high school, Coach Corrales has instituted a lot of very innovative initiatives as far as promoting sports in our district, and doing a great job there. And so what I want to do, though, is highlight currently this school year athletics budget for the 23-24 school year was $2.1 million. Projected increases for next year, we're looking at around $35,000 in transportation increase. We're looking at a $17,000 increase in officials. We're looking at $5,000 increase in EMS for being there in case we have any injuries. Also, obviously as students are going out to the different sports, we have to feed them, so we're looking at an increase of about $9,000 there. And then hopefully, possibly, as if we have a deep run in the playoffs with our athletics we would be looking at a potential increase of $30,000 in transportation again. And so all told, we're looking at an increase of about $90,000 for next year in athletics. And so in the spirit of efficiencies, athletics is, as I said, for this year was a $2.1 million budget. Athletics feels that they're able to stay there at 2.1 for next year and still be able to take care of what they need to take care of. Understanding that we may have to come back, should some things come up that were unexpected, but pretty confident that we'll be able to stay at 2.1 million for next year and not worry about trying to increase for next year. That's it. Stand ready to answer any questions.
You were not kidding about warp speed. Suzanne Canoyer?
Thank you. Are you predicting the increase in transportation due to the realignment and where we're having to go with our students? I think that there are probably some further distances for next year
Yes,
coming
ma'am.
up.
All three rounds will be towards Corpus.
Okay.
Ms. Eaton?
Hello? Okay. I remember we had kind of talked about the bus situation, of getting a couple of luxury liners, I believe we called them, for the athletics department. Are we still looking at that, or are we going in a different direction?
Actually, Mr. Johnson, I believe, has ordered some buses that have the undercarriage.
That's what it was, in the overhead.
For our athletes, for us to use and replace some charters in times of maybe going to like a Lake Travis where they're 90 miles, but just it's not safe going to somewhere like Corpus and then coming back and having to coach and then drive back so late. So he did do that for us. So we're anxious to see those buses when they come in.
Okay, so that's going to cover what we had discussed, though, as far
Oh,
as?
no, ma'am. The luxury liners, no.
No, I mean, with the local transportation.
It's definitely going to help.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
That's, because I hadn't heard anything else about it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Coach.
Ms. Ryan?
I guess this isn't necessarily athletics specific. It really applies to more than one. Have we made any progress? I know this came up like 4 months ago about trying to integrate our student code of conduct, because we have one for athletics and one for cheer and one for band and one for theater, and like there's a different set of standards for everyone. So how long you're out of theater if you're doing something wrong is different than athletics. Were we able to get like that committee of all those departments together and look at trying to synthesize that for last year so that there's kind of one Judson standard of how we expect kids to act and what the consequences
Yes,
are for?
Dr. Fields has tasked me with that committee.
Okay.
And we have our first meeting next month.
Okay.
And
Thank you,
so
Jennifer.
we have people from every department, even agriculture, fine arts. Ms. Bullock will be on that committee as well. So yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, great. No, I know, we just want to, from a parent standpoint, like, a lot of the parents want to make sure that there are consequences. I know I see it from the athletics probably more than some of the other extracurriculars, because I don't have band kids or anything, type things, but when kids are doing the wrong things, they shouldn't have the same privileges as the kids who are doing all of the right things. So, it's got to be restorative and give kids a chance, but, there's also some things you don't get a chance from. So if you're vaping marijuana, you probably shouldn't be back on a sports field 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later.
I think that's in the, definitely, it's in the athletic code of conduct. If that's a consequence, then you're out. But I would say that this is a Herculean task that we've asked Coach to put together, because a lot of people have different points of view, when it comes to keeping kids involved in their programs and how much that program means to their consistency in being involved in school. And she's going to have to wrangle all that together to say, hey, you guys, we all need to land on the same page and say, going forward, this is what happens. Because one of the more stricter areas, believe it or not, when it comes to what's tolerated and what's not is cheerleading. And, you know, for them to be able to fall back and let some stuff, I don't know. I just
Yeah.
appreciate you, Coach. Thank you.
Yes, no, I appreciate your efforts, and I know the parents do too, because one set of expectations will hopefully make things a lot clearer for everybody. Thank you.
Well, Coach, I would just add that we've seen a lot of success in athletics and still a standard, and I appreciate all the hard work you and your team have done for that. It's definitely not easy. So I guess you've brought before this board some very innovative programs to reach students. And in your assessment, are those initiatives still connecting? Are they working? Or what is your thoughts? We're a year into, or 2 years away from the last time you presented a major initiative for reaching students. How's that gone?
So at the end of the year, we'll do our measures of success to measure all of those categories. And so we don't have an accurate assessment as of now for the school year, because we'll do that at the end of May, and then I do that report in June. We call it the Chick-fil-A Leaders Cup, right? So I think that just based, especially discipline, like Ms. Ryan talked about, was our focus this year, and reducing those referrals. I'm very optimistic that those measures of success scores are going to be elevated to a standard that we want to be at.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I don't have any questions. I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you, Coach. Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
Well, next up is business and finance. So I'd ask Ms. Davis to come up and go through and open up for questions about her part. Her department.
Good evening, board members, board president, and Dr. Fields. My name is Sassy Davis, and I am the Deputy Superintendent for Business and Operations. And with me today, I have our Director of Finance, Ms. Amanda Martinez, and we're going to be sharing with you our program review for this school year. The Business and Finance Department consists of accounting, accounts payable, purchasing, payroll, and together we also collaborate with our grants department. There are three main strategies that we will be sharing with you today that the finance team has been working on. You are familiar with the fact that over the last several years, we have been using the ESSER funds to supplant our payroll, and that has been done in an effort to increase the general fund. This is the last year that we will continue to do that, as our ESSER grants will be disappearing at the end of this year. And you can see that our payroll amounts that we have used thus far since March. Please keep in mind that these payroll amounts also keep our incentives. We did use ESSER to pay for our incentives this fall, and that amount is included in there. We also use our title or ESSA grants to supplant our payrolls in positions such as coordinators, instructional coordinators, and specialists, and those are just some of those positions that we do. Ms. Martinez will talk about key strategy number 2.
Good evening, Board. Key strategy number 2 is, as you know, we're working right now on our budget. We have our second budget workshop next week. And so we currently are meeting with our departments, directors and cabinet members, and to assist in finding efficiencies in order to possibly decrease at a 10%. And we feel confident that we can do that. Exceptions with operations, they usually spend their funds, and big area that is needed. Yeah, it's typical. And so like right now, we have our non-payroll budget at $48.7 million. So we're looking to reduce that. One of the things that we are making sure is that we are going to meet our spending on our state mandated allotments.
And then key strategy number 3, we have been collaborating with our HR staff to conduct staffing this year. One of the things that I would like to mention is that we did conduct staffing at the elementary, still at 21 to 1, which is lower than the state requirement. And we would like to conduct that Same staffing for middle school and high school at a 23 and a 24-to-1 ratio in order to find efficiencies based on our enrollment. You can see the local payroll there. The results to date, of course, is that we have been, over the last several years, as mentioned earlier, been able to increase our general fund, but that's something to keep in mind as the ESSER and categorical funds do disappear. And then we have, go ahead and scroll this. As Ms. Martinez mentioned before, those discussions right now are currently ongoing, but we do feel confident that we are able to reduce our department budgets by 10%. And then our staffing audit, we're awaiting our results coming very soon by Moss Adams in order to find those staffing ratio efficiencies, and as well as our pay system audit, and even tonight you will be hearing regarding our 500 series audit from Ms. Sharon Fury. Some of the support that we're seeking for next year, there's really no anticipated cost on this, but I'll let Ms. Martinez discuss moving our ACH vendor payment all electronic.
Okay, so our wonderful accounts payable coordinator is working with another accountant to help implement this system where we just go ACH, electronic EFTs, in order to, it will reduce costs. There's cost in postage, there's cost in stopping payments of a check's lost. It helps with time and effort on reconciliation of the books, and all that is being handled by accounts payable, one of our accountants. Some of the things that they are doing to ensure that it runs smoothly is getting all vendors, involved in making sure that they fill out the right paperwork and they have a bank letter, that the information is being confirmed and all that good stuff. So, and another thing that it can also help, when checks are not cash, we have to send the unclaimed properties to comptrollers. In this case, it goes straight to their bank and they receive their funds. Makes a lot of vendors happy too.
And then the last thing, of course, we are already doing this, and you've heard it from several departments tonight, is that 10% reduction. And we would like to be the first to model that as the finance team. You see our budgets there. We do anticipate this coming year reducing 10% or more, both from the finance and the innovation department, which I currently oversee. Do you have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Where are you seeing the reduction in cost? What areas are you looking to?
All the departments. We've already met with all of the operations department. That one was a little bit difficult to make some cuts there, only because we've had some unexpected costs, chillers, air conditioners, things of that sort. However, in the innovation department, we've made a 12% cut already into that budget. We've had conversations with HR, and they mentioned some of their cuts. But every single department is expected to reduce by at least 10%. Some departments have identified themselves willingly where they have historically seen how their budgets have been trending and where they can give back.
And could you clarify the ratio, how you're looking to change that?
So for elementary, we are looking at staffing at 21-to-1, which was the ratio that we used last year, which was a decrease from before. And then for middle school, we are looking at 23-to-1, which is one up from last year, and 24-to-1, but that at the high school, which is still a very good staffing ratio.
And the middle school.
Middle school, 23-to-1.
Middle school, and just one student in.
One student increase from.
It's really
last year.
low.
It's
in terms
actually
of
very low for secondary.
Clarify where we are right now and where you're talking about going to.
So the way we staffed for this year that we're currently sitting in, we staffed last year at 21-to-1,
22.
22-to-1, and 23-to-1. For next year, we are proposing staffing still at 21-to-1 at elementary, keeping that the same. Middle school going one up, 23-to-1, and high school going one up, 24-to-1.
And that'll reduce the number of teachers needed? How will that?
It would reduce the number of teachers needed. We would find some efficiencies there, yes, ma'am.
Any idea how many teachers?
I would say approximately about 120, maybe.
Definitely, it's in that area. I hesitate to put something out there like that, but definitely we're going to see efficiencies because what we had anticipated in terms of student enrollment numbers at the beginning of last year and what we staffed at is not necessarily where we are this year. So we're seeing efficiencies just based off the decrease in the number of students that actually came in versus what we had anticipated. So now when we go back, we see reductions in the needed FTEs to be able to fund. But the place where we're going to really look at is I've tasked Dr. Saunders and Dr. Toppin to look at the master schedules. And once we determine what we need in the classrooms, we're going to take some really hard looks at, okay, how many teachers do we need to teach English at Wagner? And how many do we have? But yes, we think that we'll see a reduction in staff based on.
Did you say 120 teachers?
I did, ma'am, but I would hate for you to hold me to that until we actually take a better look at our enrollment. I was the one that used that number.
Okay, because you said our enrollment is going down?
Our enrollment went down from what we had anticipated, yes, ma'am. If
And
you
that
were
alone-
to,
That alone isn't helping with this?
that alone will help with this because now we'll see a decrease in the number of FTEs that we actually need going into next year because right now we're staffing them based on where they currently are with the students that they have in their classes.
Okay, well, I'll be interested to know the impact on number of teachers when we clarify that.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Faulkner?
And
Can
that's
you,
why- Exactly. Well, I want to be careful about when we say we'll see a decrease. A lot of teachers are lost over the summer through attrition. I just don't want the sentiment to come from this meeting that we're out here terminating people because we don't. That is not what needs to come from this meeting, and that's not what the case is. We are not terminating anyone. We're looking at doing this through attrition. There's other ways to get this done. So if there's a need, but I don't want anyone to feel like we're letting folks go.
Ms. Faulkner?
I'm just wondering, when we speak of efficiencies, and I'm a little confused because we haven't, as a board, even seen, other than the audit committee, the results of the staffing audit. And so, I mean, we already know that, I'm just a little bit worried because we have so many openings, so many that have not been filled. And here we're talking about cutting any number of positions without even looking at the audit that we paid for. So can you speak to that? Or, I mean, is
Well,
there a
usually-
correlation?
I would hate to speak about an audit that has not been shared yet, and I think that it would be safer to wait until the board is able to take a look at that audit, because a lot of the decisions will ultimately be made by the board. Each of the audits that we are currently conducting are going to bring to you a recommendation, and that decision will be yours.
I can help maybe. When you say that we have a lot of vacancies, we don't have a lot of places in the district where we're so understaffed that there's teachers in there teaching 50 students at a time. We're able to manage our class loads and the number of students we have in our classes. Matter of fact, if you go to some of the campuses, you'll find that those numbers in the classroom are relatively low, where you could have stacked two classes together. Now, don't get me wrong, and I know your background in specialty, there are certain teaching professions where we have a shortage of teachers. We're not exclusive. That's across the nation and definitely across the state of Texas. And when it comes to special ed and bilingual, I don't know if you can ever have enough. So I'm not trying to say that in every capacity we're filled up. We're not. But in some areas, we could combine some classes.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is, word on the street
Yes, ma'am.
is that departments have been told there need to be efficiencies. And yet, we're waiting to hear the results of the staffing audit. And so it's kind of like putting the horse before the cart, because
Not necessarily, Ms. Faulkner, because what we do is we say, okay, at this particular campus, you're going to have 150 fifth graders or 110 fifth graders. Then we take 21 to 1, and then we divide up how many teachers you need to be able to do that. What we're finding just in doing that, based on the number of students you have projected to come in, is that they have 6 teachers. They only need 5. Well, we already showed that there's a need, that we have another person that we can move somewhere else if there becomes a need at another campus. And that's what we're talking to the principals. Yes, ma'am, we will. Yes, ma'am, we will. We're looking into that.
And to add a response to your question, Ms. Faulkner, when we're talking about asking departments to find efficiencies and reduce their budget, I'm not talking about their payroll budget. I'm completely talking about their surplus budget on general supplies, on any other things, additional consultant services, things like that. I'm not talking about touching their payroll budget at all. So thank you for that question.
And of course, the program review gives us a snapshot of where things are now. We do have the Moss Adams internal audit next week that we have a presentation. We have a TACB audit that'll probably be coming out in the middle of April. We have already our ongoing HR audit. So we do have a lot of working functions happening that are all going to kind of culminate here in the next month. So that'll help us in our decision making. So I think that's good. Ms. Ryan.
I guess going back to the staffing at the secondary level, don't want to disagree with those numbers. I just want to caution on cut lines, where the cut lines get drawn for certain classes. I'm going to call them the ROI classes, which are AP classes, dual credit classes, CTE certification classes, student government class that leads to a scholarship in leadership, my daughter's got things just from being in student leadership. There's an extra scholarship amount on there. So I don't want us to lose some of those ROI classes that we get something out of and our students really get a future, especially some CCMR and some other things out of, because when I hear things like, we don't have authorization for another Spanish teacher at a middle school, but we're going to add a general music class. To me, that doesn't sound quite right, because Spanish is a graduation requirement. So if you knock that out in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and we can talk about it more when we talk program review type thing. It's just an example of maximizing participation and master schedules of classes, especially that are that lead to your diploma. So if we can knock out Spanish 1 and 2 and even Spanish 3 for our dual language kids down in the elementary or down in middle school on a new 7 schedule. So let's just, if we can be careful with that master schedule so that we don't lose everything that doesn't have 24 kids, because you're not going to get 24 kids in AP biology. It's not going to happen. But I don't want to lose that opportunity for 12 or 18 of our kids.
I don't want to give the impression that every class can take 24 kids. I mean, especially in CTE, if you've only got 16 sewing machines, I can only take 16 kids at a time. And if I've only got 24 computers in the class, then I'd cap out at 24. So I get that. I would also say that in terms of rigor and relevance in some classes, you can't stack them. You can't have extra kids in a Spanish 1, because that's a really intense program. Now, as you get up in the, Spanish 3, Spanish 4, Spanish 5, when everybody's speaking Spanish in the class, well, now you can stack students and have different levels that you have to instruct. But Dr. Toppin, in terms of being able to cut off classes or limit the number of students in an AP or dual credit class?
Yes, sir. I will say that just this week, we've gotten what we call our simple tallies. This is the number of kids that requested courses, and the counselors have placed all of those courses into a system, and then we run a report and we get how many kids requested what course.
So when we're looking at that, we also have to take into consideration that our largest number of students is at our 9th and 10th grade level, if you're talking about high school. At our middle school levels, it's our 6th graders that is our biggest class. And so when you're looking at courses that they can earn high school credit in at the middle school level, we still have to take into consideration that we still have to service the bulk of the students with limited number of teachers. And so at most of our middle schools right now, you only have 2 teachers in each content area per grade level. So I have 2 English teachers, 2 math teachers, so on and so forth, at each grade level. And so when we're looking at offering courses that only 5 kids requested or 10 kids requested, but then on this hand over here, I still have to service the other 300 6th graders that are in that course, or the other 200 and something 7th graders, we have to weigh that with the number of teachers that we have. And then at the end of the day, in my conversations with our principals at the middle school level, we offer the high school courses in order for their kids that are accelerated to get a leg up so they can open up their schedule at the high school. But at the end of the day, if I don't get a foreign language in middle school, I will have 4 years of opportunities to get it at the high school level. And so we offer the selection because we want to be able to offer it for every kid and try to service it. But at the end of the day, our classes and what appears on our master schedule, it's driven by the simple tally.
Understood.
And how many students requested that course. And sometimes, unfortunately, as a high school principal, I had to make some hard decisions.
And I think it's just about being open to the conversation. Don't think you get, exactly 24-1 is the exact number of teachers that you get, high school and middle school principals. If you are not able to offer something you think you need to offer, please come back and ask about it. If you want to be doing more Spanish classes, if you want to be doing more LOTC, you want to be doing something, I don't want our principals to not come back and ask and be able to justify that this is what's in the best interest of kids going through, and think they're being held only to a number and kind of afraid to ask for an extra allocation or two that we might see, because those middle school especially numbers will then feed the high school and put them in a much better position, because this 7 schedule is really going to be life-changing for a lot of our high school kids in terms of who do CTE plus sports plus band and do it all, and trying to figure out how to do it all. Some of it's going to be trying to do a bunch of it in middle school so you can do more in high school. So
There's a range, I believe, at secondary. I know there was a range when I was a principal that if a class was able to, even if it was French, even if it was Mandarin, if they're able to get 18 students that are interested in that class, then we're going to probably offer that program. It's not one that we would take away. It was the extreme numbers of 7 or 8 or less than 10 that we were like, okay, what are we doing? We can't have a full FTE in the classroom with less than 10 students. So there's a window that we look at.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to add that I appreciate the effort for 21-to-1 in elementary that we had our first year, and again, back to return on investment. The goal for that wasn't because we want to always have lower, the goal was to have better academic performance. So when we're looking at that, the investment we're putting into that is enormous, because we'd easily go 22-to-1 and save all kinds of money. The goal is to see better results, so I'm real sensitive to that. Secondly, where the discipline issues have been has been middle school and high school. And so when you have higher student-teacher ratios in there, I'm comfortable with that only if we augment it with some strategies that address the student need in middle school and in high school, because we have to help teachers address discipline issues. And it's not safe in some instances. Teachers having to break up fights, and there are some challenges there. So as long as when we come back to the table, we're looking at how we can augment, and even if it's for a 2 or 3 year run on a program that helps campuses, that can make a difference. So I just want to kind of put that out in the universe as well, because I think there are avenues for us to pursue in grants and in partners that can help with that. But just want to put that out there. Any other comments, questions? Ms. Stafford?
Will we be able to get at least a rough general overview of the reductions in the departments, especially as it might impact students and resources to students, just so we can get an idea of what's being taken away?
Yes, ma'am. You will see that in budget workshop next
Okay.
week.
Okay, thank you.
It'll be a huge overview, though, Ms. Stanford. I don't want there to be, right, well, it'll be, this is how many we feel like we'll be able to decrease in terms of FTEs. This is how many we're,
I apologize. If I understood that you asked for the reductions in the departments of in terms of money. That will be presented in the budget workshop next week.
did you say teachers or departments? Okay, I apologize. Okay, I thought she said teachers. I apologize.
Well, Ms. Davis, thank you. I just want to say that the audit, the internal audit from Moss Adams has been sent to all of us on the board. So we'll have this weekend to look it up. I just saw an email, no? So it just was sent during our meeting, unless I'm wrong. But it should have, no? Well, we'll double check. Thank you, thank you.
So, next up is Student and Family Support Services, and once again, we'll give a brief overview and then move quickly to whatever questions you may have.
We good to go? Thanks for saving the best for last. We appreciate it. Good evening, board members and Dr. Fields. We're thankful for the opportunity to share the program review for Student and Family Support Services. Student and Family Support Services encompasses specific areas such as guidance and counseling, McKinney-Vento, mental health services, restorative justice, and truancy and dropout prevention, just to name a few. Just to be clear, in the target population, all of the departments that fall within Student and Family Support Services are listed there. We have asked Monica Garcia to join us today. She's going to talk a little bit about strategies that are in place for the 23-24 school year, as well as components we are engaging in to really move that efficiency conversation forward and how we can suggest efficiencies for the upcoming school year. She's also going to give a brief overview of our budgets for the last 2 years, and then we will stand ready to take any questions you guys might have. Ms. Garcia, are you ready?
Good evening, Board President, board members, and Dr. Fields stepped out. And thank you, Dr. Saunders, for that overview. Once again, I'm Monica Garcia, the Executive Director of Student and Family Support Services. One of the things I want to talk about first is some of our strategies now and moving forward. Coming out of COVID, district attendance rate was 90.2%, and we currently have a district attendance rate of 92.38%. And through the acquisition of the ACOG grant, which is about $404,000, we have put in some mechanisms in place to try to increase student attendance. One of that is a placement of 4 student support service officers, and we also have hired some supervisors in that role as well. What we're doing is we're monitoring our attendance closely and increasing parent communication. With these systems in place, we plan to have a goal for our district attendance of 94% for the 2024-25 school year. We also want to continue to decrease our dropout rate. As in 2020-2021, for our 9th through 12th grade students, it was 3.8%, and in 2021-2022, it was decreased to 3.6%. In 2020-2021 for 7th and 8th grade students, it was 1%, and we had a decrease in 2021-2022 to 0.6%. We want to increase our staff attendance in our CARES team meeting and continue to work with the Juvenile Service Court to encourage students to re-enroll in school. We're also working in collaboration with United Way to provide additional services such as transportation and housing and re-engagement services. We are working on increasing our graduation rate, working with JLA in an evening school to assist students with accelerated instruction. And instead of the traditional comprehensive high school services, we want to be able to provide them with the best placements to meet graduation requirements. Last but not least, our budget for the 2022-2023 school year was $70,500, and our current budget for this year for 2023-2024 is $70,000. With the ACOG grant, we feel that in terms of efficiency, we can decrease our local budget 10% and still meet all of our requirements. And that's all we have. So if you have any questions for us this evening.
Go ahead, Ms. Ryan.
No, I'm really glad to see these attendance numbers up. I know at our first budget workshop, they had our attendance numbers down at 89%, and I'm like, ooh, that's a lot of money we're losing. So when those numbers start to get to the 92, 93, and potentially 94, like, that's huge increases to our state revenue. So I'm glad we're seeing some return on investment in all these grants that we've been applying for and hiring of additional people, because I mean, kids in school learning is the most important thing, but kids in school money to help learning is also really important too. So let's, keep getting them there. So great work from your truancy department. Thank you.
I wanted to add, obviously, this is one of my favorite departments, not that I don't like the other ones, but it's.
That was recorded.
I said one of my favorites. It's important that we obviously reach students. These initiatives within your umbrella reach students and really help those that are at risk and that are vulnerable. And so there's you didn't allude to it, I don't think, unless I missed it, the wraparound services that we're doing. What's the update on the wraparound services for?
So wraparound services are mentioned up there in the very top, just because we didn't kind of read all of those pieces. We highlighted a few. We actually briefed wraparound services at the last site-based meeting, which I believe was Tuesday evening. We have sat in a couple of meetings with facilities and planning through the process. To be very honest with you, it looks like the university health side will be opening probably about 4 to 5 weeks before the actual Judson ISD side opens. We're in the phase right now, and if I get any of this wrong, I want you guys to help me with mapping out parking spaces, final components of technology, as well as on the Judson ISD side, figuring out the schematics for where we want specific offices and then those common spaces. So I feel like we're getting close to the finish line.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I don't attend those site-based meetings, so I
Yes, sir.
appreciate your attention
Yes,
on
sir.
that. Again, keep on doing what you can. Obviously, I'm very receptive. I mentioned a couple of times during previous reviews here today that, it's important to partner with organizations that can offer more services. I know they exist. I know they're out there. And so looking for any way to help reach students across the district. So, Ms. Faulkner?
How long is the ACOG grant? How many years?
The ACOG grant, we have to reapply yearly, so we're in the reapplication phase again for next school year right now.
Okay. So I guess my question then is, if we're in the application process, we really don't know if we're going to have that available next year if we
Correct. This
Okay.
grant runs to September, so we have funding with this $404,000 up until September, and then we will be notified in April, May for the following year. It will continue, and they run through September of the next year.
Okay, thank you.
We feel confident, though.
Ms. Eaton?
Mic check. Are you leaving right away?
No, I'll
Okay,
stay here.
okay. I have some information that was shared with me yesterday about a couple of different programs in the city of San Antonio, and I definitely want to share it with you. Because it all involves the family and the kids that we are seeing that, potentially could be homeless and stuff like that.
Okay, great. I'll stay after.
Okay.
Wait for you, Ms. Eaton. Okay.
I'll give it to you right after.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So we do have one final item that'll be a discussion item. We'll vote on it next week on the 4th, but obviously it's important, and so we wanted to hand it out to you, Dr. Fields, to give us an update on the rubric discussion.
Yes, sir. So one of the tasks, and if Ms. Fury can go ahead and make her way to the microphone, one of the tasks that we were given as an administrative team was to look at the pay structure and see how we could correct what appeared to be a lot of concerns about inconsistency in the application of people who came in. So we sat down with Ms. Fury, explained that to her, And what we quickly came up with, in my opinion, was that the only way to recalibrate was to come up with a way to literally reevaluate and apply that same evaluation to everyone across the board. So Ms. Fury was able to do that, and she came up with a rubric. I would tell you, though, not to steal her thunder, but yesterday, as a cabinet, we had an opportunity to speak for clarification purposes to TASB about their upcoming survey or audit that they're doing on our pay system. And when they were asking clarifying questions and giving us an idea of where they were leading, it looks like what we need to do is come up with a rubric to reevaluate, but how we're going to propose the implementation of the pay structure will probably be based on what you guys hear from the TASB survey. So we're not prepared to talk about pay, but we are prepared to talk about how to evaluate. And this rubric, we feel, is an excellent piece that can be used for recalibration as we go forward. So I would open it up to Ms. Fury to go ahead and say a few words about her proposal. And then if you could, Ms. Fury, talk a little bit about entry-level charts versus teacher yearly pay charts, if you could, please.
Sure. Good evening, everyone, to the board president, the school board, Dr. Fields, and the rest of the staff that are here. I was before you probably about a month ago or so, and we talked about the study that I'm doing with the 500 series, your pay grades in the 500 series. So in conducting that survey, a lot of things came to light. And I'm going to start with the fact that there's been a lot of inconsistencies, I believe, in the administration of pay. And so I think it would be in the best interest of the district to come up with a plan to have as objective as a system where you've got strict procedures and guidelines so that anybody pretty much can follow that. And that way you have consistency. I hear a lot of noise out there about people's pays wrong and people's pay, and it's been, it's unfortunate that it's happened. However, in order to move forward, because the district has about 3,000 employees plus, it would be challenging to go backwards. So we know that there's been some inconsistencies in the HR department with turnover, however that works. And so the most important thing is going forward. In doing the study, some of the issues that I ran across, is that information is not really in people's files. It's not available to really get everything that you need. And so that makes it a little more challenging, takes a little bit more time. You have to, we're still emailing people for service records because they're missing. There was a point in time where they changed software systems, and someone decided at some point they weren't going to put the stuff in the personnel file. They were just going to leave it in the software system. And so then the software system, they changed again, and so we had access to that information. So I had access to that information up until spring break. Once we came back from spring break, that information was not available. So I think Ms. Ghosh has worked with the company to get access back to that system. And so I have some recommendations for Dr. Tagano about pulling that information so that when that goes away, we have the information for those people's files. So it's been challenging overall. One of the things about when we had the meeting with TASB yesterday, and I was able to sit in for a little bit of that, when you're looking at, I understand y'all have the charts that you're using now, the current charts, and I think there's been some questions about those charts. And so the entry level, when you have a chart like that or any type of scale, it doesn't necessarily affect people who are currently working here. It's for new hires. Those charts are for new hires. The rubric that I presented, and I'll review again tonight, is for new hires. but we had to start somewhere as a base to figure out where the district is as far as inconsistencies with something. And so we decided we would do everybody on that 500 scale to see what the inconsistencies are like. And there's some inconsistencies. There's some severe inconsistencies. I noticed that in the review and looking in the files, things were really going well until about 2018, 19, I guess, sounds about when it starts. So the wheels were starting to wobble a little bit. You guys had a compensation person in place, and once that person left, they replaced them, but then that person left shortly thereafter. And so once that happened, then the wheels kind of came off. And that's where we started to see really severe inconsistencies. And and so there's a period of time there. So when I did each person's chart, I actually put the date they were put in the position, because that gives you a story about, okay, how did this go wrong? And so I think that's kind of where we are. And so the board's going to need to make a decision, and Dr. Fields is going to need your support, because there's a lot of noise out there from what I understand. And so because it's going to be, and I think the fact that TASB has let the district know that in those pay grades that I was looking at, the pay is low for, on average. And so that would kind of help with, if you make adjustments to the system, that would definitely help with the results of the audit, I believe. The charts that they use now, I understand there was one year where there was some money missing, like something went down, I think there was a typo, but that really only affected new people, not current employees. So I want to be very clear about that. It did not affect current employees. The rubric that I'm recommending will affect all employees, because if we start from a base with that, if you decide to do that, then we can move forward and feel as though we've provided some type of consistent process so that the salaries are equitable and fair. And so it's going to swing some ways, because there's such a disparity with some people. Their pay is so high, and then some people have been low, but it's a very small amount of people who've been underpaid, compared to your current pay system, which I think is low. There's people people that have been underpaid, generally in certain pay grades too. I thought it was interesting. So, and there's a lot of things you can deduce from the data, because I was looking at a lot of different things, and I won't mention those today because I want to really focus on the rubric. So right now you have charts that were developed. But what has happened is when employees came in, they gave them their service, their affidavit, turned in service records. And so some people that were doing salary administration gave people 2-for-1 for certain jobs, or another person gave them 1-for-1 for certain jobs. So that's where you have the inconsistencies. And so I don't think there's anything written right now in any type of administrative procedure on salary administration. And so if we move forward with this rubric, I would make sure that we have written guidelines that are very clear, and that the staff is trained on how to utilize the system, because that's what's important. I think that's another reason why there had been inconsistency, because the staff hasn't been going to training like they should. You should keep that updated at all times. And so it's just a matter of making a decision on how do we move forward with the inconsistencies. Dr. Fields, is there anything else?
Only that, back to what we were saying. Oh, thank you so much. Only back to what we were saying. We have to come up with a plan on how to reset. And this rubric offers us an opportunity to reset. And as we go forward, I just don't see a way of correcting our current situation without going through every folder and saying, this is how we're going to measure it, this is how we're going to pay it going forward. And now everybody is being paid according to the same evaluation tool. So if you could just quickly go through the compensation rubric, please.
So I'm going to skip this part. So you guys have seen this, and I think you have a copy, a hard copy. And I want to kind of focus on this So the professional employee type, this is a generic form, and the reason it's generic is because every school district's organizational chart is different. They call positions different things. And so when you hire an employee who comes from another school district, I'm going to give you an example. Harlandale ISD, they have very few directors. Their people who are coordinators are like directors. They don't have, I think they may have one assistant superintendent, but their executive team, most of them are executive directors, but they're on the executive team. And so when I was working in HR, when we hired someone new from another district, or they had worked in various districts, I would look at their experience. I would go back if I needed to and look at their organizational chart and their compensation plan. Most districts have that available online. It doesn't take a long time. And you want to do due diligence because you want to look at, and sometimes I had to ask for job descriptions because people call coordinators, some coordinators supervise people, most coordinators don't. And so you have to look at supervisory experience, you have to look at the duties and responsibilities for those jobs. And we had a big discussion here at Judson about academic coordinators and them being required to have a master's degree. And so my question was, why? They're not really supervising anybody. Their job duties are very similar to the coach, to the academic coach. Am I correct when I say that?
The trainers.
Academic trainer. Okay, the trainer. And so, but you have some academic coordinators also. Is that correct? Curriculum coordinators. Okay, academics and curriculum's kind of similar to me. And so it's kind of like, if you think about that, do any of those people supervise anybody? They do not. So it's kind of like you have to kind of determine, but this district decided that one position needed to have a master's, so then you have to give them credit for that level of having to have that expertise. And so it's when you're hiring, you really have to take the time to do due diligence so that you make sure that you get the information that you need to make a decision about what points the person will receive. And so in general, in education, relevant experience has to do with things like if you had to do an internship. Social workers do internships. That's kind of a requirement for them to get their license. There's LSSPs, SLPs, they have to do internships. And so sometimes those are paid, and so you want to give people credit for that. They don't make a full salary, but you want to give them credit. There's other things people have done in the military. I feel like they should get a little credit for some of those things. And so if they're relevant, we need to give them credit. Entry level in the school business, professional, it's teachers, your counselors, they have to have master's degrees, but they don't supervise anybody. So you have to look at the job duties and responsibilities. Specialists, most of the time, they're doing specialized things, not supervising people. Your accountants, they do something specialized, they're not really supervising. So those are things that we consider entry level. And to do specific job titles, this is generic, so it's going to be different in every school district. First level management has to do with people who supervise. You have coordinators who supervise people in some districts. I know some of the little small districts, the transportation person is not a director. Sometimes they're just a supervisor or they're a coordinator. But if they're running a transportation department, that's a lot. That budget's big. I mean, it's a major thing. So you have to look at those things. Assistant principals, assistant directors, coordinators. And so those people are actually doing evaluations on individuals. And so that's first level management. Mid-level is your larger campuses, and larger departments, because they're managing more people normally. And so it's different. The same thing with high level management. A high school principal, I wouldn't want that job for anything in the world. And then if they're coming from companies like in the business area, people come from outside of the school business, but they may have been a CFO at another company. They may have been an executive director. So you have to look at a vice president, something like that. And then executive level, of course, would be your leadership team. And in some districts, those titles are chief now. That's a new thing. There are assistant superintendents, there's associate superintendents. So there's all those things, but they fall under that umbrella. So does anybody have any questions about that part of it?
I do. I have one
Okay.
in regards to the relevant experience.
Okay.
When you say education, so let's use the teacher, right? Teachers certified, they get, you seem to know where I'm going with this.
Well, normally in that category, people that have been teacher assistants.
Okay.
Or they've worked at a daycare. because they're working with kids. Those are the types of points where we give points. And they may not have had their degree at that time, but they went back to school, got their degree, and now, but they need to get credit because they've worked with kids. So that's where the relevant comes in.
So where would a master's come in terms of?
Like master's degree?
Yeah,
A person having it or it being required for the job?
having it, just having it.
Has nothing to do with it. Your job, you can have a doctorate degree just because you have it, but you're an accountant. I mean, I'm just using that.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Or
that
if it's
doesn't,
not in the subject matter area in which you teach.
or
you know.
it doesn't, in other words, your job duties, it doesn't have anything to do with your job duties. So when you're thinking about positions, it's what the job duties are and what the
Okay.
responsibilities, the supervisory experience. I think that's where you're going.
Yeah, yeah.
So because you have a master's degree or a doctorate degree and you're, whatever, and you're not, it's the job. And so that, if it wasn't required for that job, you really don't get credit for it.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I know we have stipends sometimes that we do that.
So they do get the
Yeah,
stipend.
but I just want to know in terms of the rubric if that was counted. And then lastly, just for my own clarification, if we have a teacher who's taught for 5 years and they get 5 years, because entry-level experienced teachers, 5 years, and then they get promoted to a director for 5 years, and we're looking at them. So it'd be 5 years as a teacher and 5 years as a director, and then we add that whole total
You
up.
add the total.
Okay.
And so I'm going to give you 2 samples just so you can see.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes.
Do you want us to answer questions on
Yeah, if you
Yes,
have a
please.
question, Ms. Ryan, if you have a question before we move on.
So this is just the generic one. We have not created so we don't have a Judson rubric with all of our Judson jobs
To me,
on.
this is the rubric. It needs to be generic. Because this is for people coming in the district. And then the people who are already here, if we start with this base, I'm the one that has done that, and I know what those jobs, I have your pay plan, I have access to job descriptions, and so I can look and see where those positions fall. I look at what their duties and responsibilities are, and I can make that decision, because you have some people who had been specialists, and then they changed the title to this, and they changed it. So basically, to be nice, I thought, okay, we can give them some extra points. But were they really supervising people? So to me, most often, when people go from teacher to academic coach or an instructional coach, they're still teachers. They're just teaching teachers.
Okay.
They're not
I guess
teaching
my
teachers.
issue with that is there is a natural progression in education, and to say that a 0-level teacher is the same as someone who's worked up to curriculum specialists and academic coaches, those are all entry-level 1-point things. That's just not how it works in education. So that's a little frustrating. But so we're not going to have a forward-facing, easy-to-understand with every Judson job description. This is still going to be backroom subjective, is what I'm hearing. Is we're going to look at it and give
Those of you who are
certain
educators
points.
in the room or have been educators, does this make sense to you? Do you have questions about it?
Perfect sense. And I wouldn't say that entry-level experience means years of teaching experience. When, like Ms. Fury said, whether you're teaching teachers or teaching students, it's still teaching.
You're a teacher.
The thing that really makes a difference in education, and I've been doing this a while, and you can ask the other people around the table who have been doing it a while, is the level of supervision. The level of responsibility that you have for other people and departments is what truly brings on the need for an increase in compensation. But teaching is teaching. Ms. Kenoyer.
I just want to say, Monica, that she's left it generic because this is how we identify people coming to the district. And they may have come from a district that said you're a coordinator, and in our district, that's a director. So she's left it generic that way so that the person who is completing the rubric can do the investigation with the job description, with looking at how the district they're coming from is set up.
Organizational chart.
So this is
That's not true, because this gets used for people who get promoted. If I become a teacher and I become an academic coach, they're redoing my
Right,
points.
but they
scale.
may
So
have
it's also
outside-
used equally for all of our internal promotions. It's not just external, just to be clear on that.
But it's not, they may have experience outside Judson that we have to look at too. So you can't just say in a Judson job gets this, because they may have experience from somewhere else. And that's why it needs to be a little more generic, because not every district is set up the same. They don't all say a coordinator does this, a director does this. Every district has latitude to set that. What's important is that we do the investigation to make sure that they're getting the appropriate credit.
Correct. And then I would also go back to the trainer-coach stage. That's something that's done in Judson. That's not exclusive to other districts. We changed it. I mean, if you were to, I digress. I would ask Dr. Toppin and Ms. Davis and Dr. Taganoff, are there a lot of major differences between what trainers do and what coaches do in Judson ISD?
Dr. Fields, when that position was developed originally, academic coach and academic trainer have the same roles and responsibilities. The only difference in their job descriptions is that the academic coach requires an admin certification. That was done at that time because we had a lot of people in a role that were shifted that had the admin certification. It's not required, because the job between an academic coach and an academic trainer, they do the exact same thing. In fact, moving forward, because we use categorical funds for that position, we're recommending that principals only take a look at academic trainers, because the certification is not needed for the role.
Understood, because they're not supervising.
They're not supervising, they're coaching teachers.
Thank you.
And I would just say that my expectation would be that we would sit with employees externally coming in and go through this, but also internally, where they understand if there's any questions. That's expected.
So basically, when we implemented this at a district that I worked in, when the person onboards, we actually bring them in and we go over this and we ask them. In other words, they have an opportunity to let us know exactly what, that's why it's important a district this size. I was doing that myself and the assistant director of HR at Southside. But the district this size, you probably need somebody designated to do that. They can have other duties, but you need to have somebody focused on this. So you bring them in, and we actually would let them review it and have them sign. So this is kind of like their setup sheet, and it goes in their file, and so that's your record.
Ms. Fury, I did have Ms. Faulkner that had a question.
Yes, Ms. Faulkner.
Go ahead.
So I like this, but to Board Member Ryan's point, this is good for someone coming into the district. But if we're saying we're going to use this for the entire district, I think it would be best if we do create one with examples, like the coach position fits right here, just because otherwise, how are we going to, if let's say you're the, how am I going to say this politically correct?
But if the staff is trained.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get to.
That's the key. They need that. They're going to need the
Dr.
training.
Tagano and I are both working in the same department. One day, I feel like coach should fall under first level management. And then I wake up the next day and I go, no, I changed my mind. How are we going? I guess
you asked
what
a
I'm
great
trying
point.
to say is, how are we going, if it's this generic, how are we going to keep it the same across the board, especially for those of us, those employees who are already here? Because I don't want me to, it's just like insurance companies. You call and you get one quote, and then you talk to someone else and you get another quote. We don't need that. We need to fix it, and we need to have some insurance in place, some policies in place, and some very strong things in place.
Clarify. So you're absolutely correct, Ms. Faulkner. I would tell you that this is a rubric that will be used inside of their folder. What goes along with this, just like with anything else in public education, is a procedure that now our Human Resources Department will craft and it will have every position outlined in our district of what falls in what category that a person can go back to. It's kind of the Bible that will direct them on how this is supposed to
Yeah,
go.
that needs to
So,
happen.
Dr. Taganow, do you want to expound on that?
Well, before she does, I do want to get my point in. My point is that we as a board also have the ability to do internal audits and can create an internal audit plan that identifies employee files every summer if we need to ensure there's compliance with that and that we don't run off course. So HR being
And Ms.
trained.
Macias, that's really the staff's job, your bosses, the people that are the bosses, that's their job.
Yeah, well, internal audits.
And then you hold them accountable.
Yeah, but the internal audit is also a board mechanism that enables us to use an extra step, and we wouldn't do every one of them, but we would empower them to ensure so that we have some compliance there.
And y'all can call me and come out, I'll be happy to. Just kidding, I'm getting tired.
And then, of course.
I've been up since 4:30.
God bless you. I think I'll have Ms. Stanford talk, but let Dr. Taganow make her point, and then I'll call on you, Ms. Stanford.
Well, I just wanted to add that, yes, there would be a separate administrative procedure that we would have to put in place to add the specificity of those items that are being brought up of internal positions. I think that trying to define it on the rubric itself would be difficult because it is just a general tool that we are using, but the admin procedure that the staff would be trained on would provide that specificity I think everybody is looking for.
No, that's okay. The other part of that would be, we really need to develop a strong way of coming back and saying, you know what, I don't like what this says, and here are my you know what I'm saying? To some remediation if need be. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying.
Ms. Stanford?
It almost sounds like we're talking about an internal and external rubric, right? Something internal that defines Judson titles, and then something like this, which is generic. And just for point of clarification, we mentioned teachers several times as examples. This isn't for teachers, right?
It's not for teachers. Teachers have a step scale. This is for the people on midpoint pay. Midpoint pay.
Yeah, I was going to get clarification when you said
It's
all
midpoint.
employees.
Yes.
Right.
Professional that are not on a step scale.
I was going to say, we do have comp plan for teachers, nurses, librarians, and counselors. This would not be applicable to them, only to those professionals.
Yes.
And so when we say teachers go into the professional field, but they have to count that teaching experience.
Well, if they have 5 years in, they get paid this amount. 6 years in, they get paid this amount. 7 years.
Yeah.
Oh, the step
So would this be used for them?
No.
Okay. Okay, so it does sound a little bit like what Ms. Faulkner was saying, like there could be some personal determination needed to determine where to place someone. That's what I'm trying to clarify. Is it going to be so clear that anyone could pick it up and figure it out?
It's pretty clear.
Yes, ma'am, definitely.
Okay.
For
And
educators,
anyone will
it's
be able to
clear.
read the administrative document and
Would
know
y'all, the
exactly
people in the
how they-
audience that are educators,
Make sense to y'all?
Because it makes sense to me, I see that we're going to have people come in with CARA experience, that would impact the overall years that we didn't get when we came in. And then it's easy enough to follow down the calculations. I've sat here and figured out, okay, I should be at 25 years because I would get
25 points. Points.
25 points. However y'all calculate that.
and you may have more points. I'll show you the points. Because the points have to do with percentages.
I think it would also help if we have one person who does this, right?
Right.
Because then you don't have 7 or 8 people looking at it and
That's-
exercising their judgment. And I like what Ms. Fury said about having the person come in and sign that they agree. And that's their opportunity to bring their evidence.
Exactly.
And say, you know, so you don't need the appeal. It happens when you actually get the offer and they show you with the rubric how much you're going to get. You bring your, and you tell them, bring your stuff, so that if we disagree, we can, you know, we can talk about it.
Well, before you move on, I know that Ms. Ryan has a couple of questions. This has been very good dialogue, but Ms. Ryan, are your questions relevant to this slide? Or do you, okay, go right ahead.
Yes, so I have a lot of notes, but I'll try and break them into whatever slide we're on. So my concern on this one is, well, I guess it applies to the second slide that's going to come up later, which is how this seems to favor upper level management and disadvantage our lower level people. So let's say a 203 custodian, it's going to take them 27 years to get 27 points, right?
Well,
But
first,
an
they'd be
assistant,
on a
hold on, let me
different
finish.
form. They're on
Let
a
me,
different form. It's the wrong form.
It's a I have another.
we've only been handed one form ever.
Well, there's an auxiliary form. Can you go to the auxiliary?
Yes.
Well, then is an accountant on this form?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about accountants then.
Okay.
So it's going to take an accountant 27 years, or a computer tech 1 or computer tech 2 or whatever, all these other professional people we have, 27 years to get to 27 points. But it's going to take an assistant superintendent only 9 years to get to 27 points. And here's the issue with that, is that it's percent of midpoint on your scale. So I'm sorry, I know I get into HR math. Sorry, I did a lot of HR. So all of a sudden, you're been here for 27 years and you're just hitting midpoint on your low scale, your 401 scale, your 301 scale. You're at the bottom of that, or you're just hitting your midpoint on that. But after 9 years, I'll pick on the 2 highest ranking people. We'll pick on the 2 511s, because there's only 2 of you, so I can pick on both of you at the same time. All of a sudden, after 9 years, you've already hit midpoint of your very high 511 scale. So what this does is keeps middle people, it looks okay for, but the low people, it keeps low, and the high people, it keeps high, because you're giving them an astronomical amount of points, and you're giving them a high amount of points on a higher scale. Something like this works on a scale where you have everyone on one scale. There isn't a 501 through 511, there's only a 500 scale, because then it would keep the lower people in the bottom, right, wherever the bottom is, the bottom rung of it, and it would keep the higher deputy superintendents near the top of one pay chart. So that's why this is internally flawed in terms of how it assigns
So,
Well,
Ms.
before-
Ryan,
before you
with
can-
all due respect, may I say this? I have never been an accountant, but I've worked in a building with accountants, and they're wonderful people. But when they get to work every morning, they go in their office, and not a lot changes for them. They have a job they do, they crunch numbers. That's it. They don't supervise people, they don't manage people. If I'm an assistant principal at a middle school, when I walk in the door, I don't know what's going to hit me in the face. If I'm an assistant superintendent somewhere, I've got to do things that an accountant will never, ever do. I have a level of responsibility that they will never have. So you
And that's why
can't.
they're on different scales. That's the problem, is you're
Right,
giving them
but-
more points and giving them a higher scale.
But if I'm coming to a job and I've been an accountant, but I've also been director of finance, and I've also been a CFO, I'm bringing a whole lot more to the table than somebody that's just been an accountant.
Ms. Fury, Ms. Ryan, I'm going to have Ms. Rodriguez comment. She probably has something relevant to what Ms. Ryan has stated. Ms. Rodriguez?
So I just want to check my understanding. Two things. One, this is the rubric where, what we're talking about, the agenda item is only for 501 to 511, correct? Those pay scales? Yeah, that is what the discussion item says.
Yeah, the
This is
discussion
for the
item is
501
about the 501. We're going to probably get a
That is
preview, it
correct.
looks like, for the
Okay.
others, but we're discussion.
And this rubric would be used to set somebody's starting pay scale when they start a new position somewhere in those pay
That's correct.
ranges.
Yes, ma'am.
And then from there, they would get their raises each
Whatever
year, whatever the
increases.
board
Based on
approves.
the
Okay.
midpoint.
That's it.
Yes,
The points would be irrelevant after year one in the
Yes,
position?
ma'am.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you.
yes, ma'am.
Ms. Ryan, if you want to continue with your questions?
I'm just going to hold the rest of mine till the end.
Okay. Okay. Ms. Fury, if you'd like to continue, unless there anyone,
So
No.
is it okay for me to show the auxiliary? Okay, because I don't want to get off out of, line. So, and this is the percentage points, and so that's, I'll skip that because that's like, that would be in the internal rubric. So, and that was a sample I was going to give y'all. Where's my little auxiliary? Okay, so this is the auxiliary rubric that I would be recommending once we get to that point. And so the jobs are very different, so because people will come in, a lot of those jobs, those people really don't have experience. They come in and they really haven't done much. They may have worked in like jobs like fast food or things of that nature. And so you're talking about, you have people that are receptionists, clerks, custodians, bus drivers, child nutrition workers, hourly employees, basically, any type of hourly employee. And so basically, it's very similar. If they've been supervisors and things of that nature, they can get points, but they're hourly employees. And so generally, most of those jobs do not require bachelor's degrees. They do not require, they may require some types of certification or training or something like that, but for the most part, that's it. So that's what that rubric would look like. So I wanted to just show y'all a sample of 2 employees that currently work in the district, and it's just a sample who
Can I
have.
ask a quick question? Is the points then the same then? Is it the same,
Yes,
like
it's
20?
the same,
Okay.
same
So
scale.
it still takes a custodian 27 years to get to midpoint. All right, cool.
No. And the thing about midpoint.
Okay, you go back a slide then?
Let me kind of explain the midpoint scale. Most
I know what
people,
midpoint is.
if you do your compensation plan properly, the midpoint should move when you give increases. So most people won't ever really get to the max because that's the whole, it's a midpoint system. So there's people that will get to the midpoint and maybe be a little bit over if they have a lot of experience. But your compensation plan, when you're giving increases, those things move, they go up. The minimum should go up, the mid should go up, the max should go up. So when there's increases, it's kind of a cost of living thing, so everything shifts. And so you get your raise, it's kind of an advantage for you. You get your raise based on the midpoint, and you may not be at the midpoint, but you get a little bit higher raise. And then those people that are over the midpoint, they get their raise based on the midpoint, so the raise is always consistent and fair. Okay, so people worry about getting to the max, and I've had to explain that to people. I said, most people will never get to the max because it constantly moves as there's increases in pay. And that's the whole point of and TASB can tell you that, that's the point of the midpoint system. Now, and I told you, it's the mystery, so we're trying to make it clear. So I have these for the board, and they're just samples of 2 employees that have the same amount of points based on the professional rubric, but in the district, their pay is very different. And so that is why Dr. Fields, they feel like we've got to figure out a place to start so that we can get people on track. Because these 2 people both have 18 points, but one of them makes $4,000 more than the other one, and the other person is $1,315 lower than they should be.
And as we're getting this documentation, part of the reason why I've asked for this to be a discussion is because we are looking at new material that we haven't seen, which is fine. And we'll have a chance to take a look at this and ask some additional questions during the
And I
week.
had actually given y'all some samples the last time.
You did.
2 assistant principals.
Yes, you did.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I just wanted y'all to see how it's inconsistent based on the experience that the person has.
You can proceed, Ms. Fury.
So if this was 2 new hires, let's just pretend these are 2 new hires coming from outside the district. Should their pay be different? They have the same amount of points. And the experience they're bringing to the table is a little different, but yet they've earned those points. Because the person that was a clerical person for 7 years, she's getting those points for that. And she actually only got 0.5 because it was clerical, now she's in a professional position. And so, but she's bringing some experience to the table, and the teacher taught for 12 years. The teacher has been an academic coordinator longer, so because the teacher was getting 1 point for teacher years, her points are equal to that person, even though she had 17, she was only getting half a point, which I think is about right. So, but that person's pay is higher. And it shouldn't be higher. Based on the rubric I developed. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah, that person's pay should not be that much higher than the other person. Does that concern you? My rubric. I used the rubric that I just showed you all to determine pay for these 2 employees, and they're on the same pay grade. They have different experience, but they have the same amount of points, but their pay is different.
Ms. Rodriguez, did you have a question?
So looking at never mind, not related to this, mine's related to the other one.
The auxiliary? Yes. Oh, okay.
So just so I'm clear, I mean, mind you, this is the first time I'm seeing this recommendation. Sample 1 is right now what we're doing currently. Sample 2 is your rubric, or are they both your
No.
rubric?
This is both on the.
Both your rubric.
Mhm.
What she's showing us, there's
2 different people that come in.
Yeah.
her rubric and the difference we're paying them.
And more than likely, this person got probably more points for the clerical work than they should have, I think.
Right.
Or something went somewhere awry. because, yeah, that should not be.
So you're saying these are two people
Currently that work here.
employed, and you used your rubric
Yes, ma'am, to compare them. Mhm.
So if they come in under your rubric, they would have been paid
Their pay would be the
The
same.
same.
This is just showing how we
Got
So-
off track.
Somebody saw 17 years of clerical experience and felt like they needed to give more weight to that than maybe someone else would. But when we take out the subjectivity and make it objective, then now everybody would come out the same. But if we were to go back on the employees that are currently in the district and use this same evaluation tool, then what will happen is where those one-to-ones happen, and it should have been 2-to-1, or 3-to-1 happened, and it should have been a 2-to-1, they'll start to manifest themselves, and then we'll be able to find out where those are and lift those people who didn't receive the appropriate level of, application, and then address those people who straight up got, hey, I'm going to give you 2 points or, 2 years for every half year you did it.
So this rubric will actually raise their compensation for those that have not been paid.
Correct.
And of course, it recognizes, now I also want to put into the conversation is that we're not looking at this point, we still have to have the TASB information to kind of equalize everything, but the intent really is to still work with our employees. We understand that there's going to be sort of a grandfather element involved to this. Certainly
Oh,
do
yeah,
want
you
to.
definitely need to do that, or
Yeah.
we'll have to move to another country.
And really, we're talking retention, right? The value of employee now has enormous weight in the system, in Judson ISD. So, but we do need to move forward with a rubric that's going to bring balance, and it looks like some stability. But like I've been told, even a great rubric is meaningless if we don't have compliance
If
for
you
it.
don't comply, that's
And
right.
so we're going to have to ensure that that happens
That's
going
correct,
forward.
sir.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Ms.
Sorry, I had to do the math calculations. So they have 18 points. Why are you at 93% of, because your email back to me said if you're at 17 points, you get a 92, if you're at 18 points, you get a 92.5, and if you're at 19 points, you get a 93.
I just
But
made
that's
this
how those
generic to
bands-
make it easy.
Well, it's a $1,500 a year difference.
What is?
That's what I'm saying. Between 93% of midpoint and 92.5% of midpoint, because I'm calculating it out at 78,243. So I'm not even, we can't even get our own math straight. So 18 points on here. So that's what I'm saying. If Monica doesn't understand it, I'm guaranteeing you no employees are going to understand it. So if you look on here, if you go to 18 points, you see a 17 to 19 band. According to the email that they sent us with Ms. Fury's results, 17, 18, 19, you break that up. So it's 92, 92.5, 93, right? So if they are 18, that means they get 92.5% of midpoint times the midpoint of a 505 times 226 days is 78,243. So we're already off by $1,500
I
a
rounded
year.
up just for this,
Okay.
it's a sample.
The point is, we've been doing a lot of rounding examples, and we have employees not getting paid right in this district. So if we can't even get the one example of one person right for this purposes,
Again,
we're going to be right, but we're going to do all this work and be back in the same boat, Suzanne.
We are
That's what we're
talking about a rubric. We're not talking
That's it.
about the pay yet.
That's it.
We're talking about this.
Correct.
She
A
just said she
reproducible
rounded it
document.
to be an easy example for us to look at. You're
And like-
getting nitpicky.
And like I said earlier, we still have the TASB audit, we have our staffing audit, the numbers, we need to see how the rubric would lay out, and then, of course, then we got to worry about the compensation part. But I'm comfortable enough right now. So if you'd like to move forward, Ms. Fury.
I'm done, sir.
Oh, you're done?
Yes, I think
Well,
we've talked about
obviously,
this long.
this is a very important topic, because part of the reason why this board initiative, and I'll say it's board initiative for the public, because we wanted to kind of right some of the wrongs that we've seen in compensation. This is a difficult topic, but I like the way this has started. I do expect, Ms. Fury and my colleagues, that we will still encounter some anomalies in the process. I think what I've asked Dr. Fields' administration and you as well, Ms. Fury, is to create a mechanism that will now enable us to have that conversation. And I give Dr. Fields credit for doing his best to assemble sort of that vision. But since we have all these ongoing processes in play, I don't expect us to come out with a perfect system right now. I do see a better system with this rubric, and I do love the idea that we'll take out the subjectivity in the process. That's where we've actually seen these pay scales that are all over the place. We don't need that variation. My commitment was to ensure that we find a process. And as we go forward, I'd like us to, again, ask administration questions, ask you questions regarding this, so next week when we vote on this, supporting the recommendation, at least we've now answered all those questions and people are as comfortable as they can be. But I appreciate the work. So, and
Thank you.
I'll open it up to any other questions for Ms. Free. Keeping in mind that it is 6:18, and if we want to get out at 6:30, and I don't know if we need to go into closed session. I did ask our legal counsel to be here, just in case if there was any legal questions we wanted to ask in closed session.
On that point, you can talk about auxiliary based on the agenda language you have for the open session. It's the closed session that's limited to the pay grade. So just to Ms. Ryan's question regarding the auxiliary, it is on the agenda. It's more posted more broadly for the open session. So if you had questions about the auxiliary, y'all can discuss those during open session.
I appreciate that clarity, and just for the record, our attorney said that we can't talk about auxiliary. I was already doing that, so you probably, but I appreciate that clarity, counsel. So anyway, in terms of this one, Ms. Stanford, did you have a question?
I'm just curious if before we vote on this, if there's any way the information could get out to employees to allow them to just review the change that's going to be made or that's being
I would personally recommend if we have folks that we want to talk to about it, like advisory committees, because I have one, you have one, but we'll take a look at this. Employees should be watching this, so if there's feedback, they can provide additional feedback. What I'd like to do is give administration the ability to go have these conversations with employees.
Right.
And that's something that we're going to hold a week before we do that. But then eventually, once we empower administration to have those conversations, we'll identify other areas that we need to address. And so that's how I imagine it working out in the best way possible.
Could it be put on the website?
This is posted
No,
here.
I mean for employees.
And it's already out there anyway, so if,
I just want to extend the courtesy to employees to see what we're what we're contemplating. Is that way outside the realm of?
It's professionals, and it doesn't apply to teachers, nurses, librarians, and
Right,
counselors. I want to make sure that that's clear, so we don't want to cause this is teachers, we're non-teacher professional positions. I'll be open and transparent about it. I'll talk to administration about any other ways to communicate this, but we're going to get feedback. I promise you, we will get feedback. So if that's what you're concerned, that we're not letting those that are going to be impacted, I promise you, they're looking at this and they will reach out to us if we have a relationship.
Well,
And if they don't, reach out to administration as well for feedback.
I do want them publicly to know that we want to hear from them and that their input is welcome and
Yeah,
desired.
according to the Texas Education Code, any employee can talk to us about any business regarding the district. So if they have questions or inquiry, I encourage them to contact board members and our administration. That's perfectly appropriate with concerns on this. And I get the fact that there is heightened interest in this. We will get feedback from employees. I just know we will.
And Ms. Stanford, may I share? I implemented this at Southside ISD, and only because they had a superintendent that came in, and I think I mentioned it when I talked to y'all last week, that was only there for like several months, and he brought in people from a charter school, and he just put a stickum on the HR person's desk and told them, I want all these people to start at 72.5. Truancy officers, and principals weren't even making 72.5, at that time. And so all the employees that it affected, I actually called each one of them individually and met with them, explained the chart, showed them, we talked about their experience, we filled it out. And then once we finished, I think it affected only about 30 employees. Everybody understood it. We did not have any grievances. And we went on about our business. So I think I would recommend if there's any drastic changes, people be called in individually. And I'm not sure if the administration will want to go that direction, but I think it would be good for the employees to feel comfortable with it.
And of course, just to kind of put this back out there, I do share information with the teachers union. I have a great relationship with AFT and TSTA. So we'll be talking about it, I assure you. Ms. Ryan, you had a comment?
Yes, I had written my comments down, so I'll try and go through quickly so we can try and get out of here on time. So first of all, we went into some of the micro level already, but really from a macro level, this rubric has not been made public until this meeting. It wasn't even published in our public board book, even though it was a public discussion that was going to happen today. So it has not been socialized. We have no input from our staff. We haven't talked to our professional organizations and teachers unions about this. That's not how we do business in Judson. We value the input of our staff, and we try to be transparent. And so this has come about in a very untransparent way. It's also very unclear how widespread the use of this rubric is. I know you mentioned, Ms. Fury, a couple of times, a few very small districts that have implemented this, but I would love the names of some similar size districts so that I can reach out to their board members and find out how many complaints that they got. But using this for 20 people in Southside is not widespread. We have over 1,000 employees that are going to be affected by this, so I would love some references on where this has worked on a large size scale. Also, we have no idea the financial impact of this rubric right now. And it is impossible for a district to adopt something if they have no clue how much it's going to cost us. We haven't finished reviewing records. We don't have the TASB pay survey. So this rubric could cost us tens of millions. It could save us tens of millions. At this point, we don't even have enough data to even know that. Not all of our HR records have been reviewed. And until we decide next year's compensation plan, we can't even figure out what midpoint is to even figure out what a percent of midpoint is. Fourth, we have no implementation plan on this. We literally have a one-page document. We don't have any of the things you were talking about in terms of an actual executable, both internal and forward-facing, with job descriptions. We're already in the heat of hiring season right now across the entire San Antonio area. We're already past the deadline for people who want to retire. That was March 1st, according to the Judson email that went out. So if we're going to talk about adjusting people's pay now, and we don't even have it together, it feels like this ship has sailed for this year, because if there's people who are unhappy with this, it's starting to get too late for them to start shopping our surrounding districts, which may only be a 5-minute drive away. Also, we miscommunicated to our staff. We said over and over that our current pay was being audited. Let's be clear, this is not a pay audit that has been occurring. This is an HR review of personnel records to put people on a new scale. We were very clear in a grievance hearing and in multiple meetings telling many of the people who think they are not getting paid correctly now to sit tight and hold on, because we're auditing your 505 pay. We're auditing all the 500s. But the fact is, no one is looking at our current pay scales and looking at your HR records and figure out if you're currently being paid or if you have been being paid right for the last 2 years. So I just want to clear up that miscommunication. So if people were holding off on grievances because we promised you that we were auditing your current pay, we're not auditing it. We're not, nobody's looking, no one's looking. Deborah, pay attention. No one is auditing, nobody's auditing Dr. Shoemaker's pay right now.
Miss Eden, she has the floor. We will have our opportunity.
To be clear, no one is looking at Dr. Shoemaker's pay right now. No one is looking at her current 505 pay.
Please.
You're confused.
We just looked at it.
Okay.
Isn't that what you did?
To be clear,
Look at all those?
she did not look at anyone's current pay. No one, okay.
Yes, she did.
Anyway,
And, yes.
The whole 500 series, she did.
Ms. Ryan, she's looking at the 500 series.
she is not looking at their current pay, everyone. She is looking at what their pay would be July 1st on a new contract with the new rubric.
If
Okay.
ever there's an
That's not what
opportunity
I'm
for
doing,
me
Ms.
to
Ryan.
respond, please let me know.
And-
All right,
ma'am.
I just have
trying
two
to be
more quick bullet
respectful,
points, and then we're going to be
but-
done. I'm done. So I'm also not happy that we are going to treat employees differently. The TCNL scale clearly gets a step increase every year, and they keep moving up their thing. And if I move from 25, then I move to 26, then I move to 27, Suzanne always looks at me like I don't know what I'm talking about. Go ask some teachers and go pull up their pay stubs. If I'm a 25-year teacher, and I look at my pay stub, I'm getting paid exactly what's on this year's 25-year compensation scale. Trust me, I've already talked to my people. But what has happened is we're going to treat the other 1,000 employees differently by also not, and that's what we're trying to relieve with this new rubric, and we're not. And then lastly, apparently we're only going to take care of the 500s right now. No work apparently has been done on the 100s through 400s. So the fact that we're going to go take care of the pay of the highest level management, and we're not going to address any potential issues with our lowest paid employees, including potentially custodians, paraprofessionals, and everyone else on that scale, it just does not seem to serve our community best. So that's what I have.
Well, Ms. Ryan, you always have a lot to say, but it's not always true or accurate. So just because you speak it does not mean it's true. And just because you speak it does not mean it's true. So what I like to do is be respectful. I give you the floor because I'm not going to censor anyone here. We all have that right as board members. However, I also give administration respect to rebut, and they respectfully will tell you that you're not accurate. But if you have concerns, I always encourage any board member, not just you, anyone, ask administration and talk about it. Get the information before you put it out there, because some people will think what you're saying is factual, and it's not. There's room. And I said earlier, this is not a perfect process. We're beginning a process because it was important that we do something to address the inequities in pay. We've started that process. Now, this is the first step. So the demeanor, your response was very negative because it's like, there's still a lot we're working through. We're not done. So give this opportunity to happen, and I think we're going to get to where we need to go. And so, anyhow, and of course, again, we need to be respectful. Ms. Eden took very great offense. I want to give Ms. Eden the floor. I just ask you to be respectful in your rebuttal, but you also have a right to speak too. Ms. Eden, did you want to say anything?
I'm not one of your kids. Do not ever talk to me like that again, okay? You don't have to tell me to pay attention. I know what I was doing. You're sitting there spewing out information that is inaccurate, and it's not fair to the employees that are here, sitting here wondering the same thing I'm wondering. What are you talking about? And it's not fair to the ones that are watching. It's not fair to the staff that put in all that time. It's not fair to her. I'm sorry, ma'am, but for addressing you as her, all the work that you've done to at least get us to a starting point, which is what we asked you to do. Thank you, okay? Because that never came out of her mouth. Thank you, okay? And thank you to the staff for all the work that you all are continuing to do at our request.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Now, Dr. Field, did you want to add anything?
Wow. I appreciate you. I would just start off by saying this, Ms. Ryan. Yes, ma'am, it is. I'm intentionally trying to talk low so it doesn't appear that I'm yelling. I will move it closer. It's really important as we move through, we've talked about the sensitivity of variations in people's pay, and that's something that everybody takes seriously.
Yes.
So as we walk through this process, the last thing we want to give is the impression that we're doing something sinister or trying to be less than credible. Trust me when I tell you, we are trying to be as objective as possible. So much so that even though we hadn't got to a decision point, I brought it up with the principals just to put it out and let them know what was going on and to get their feedback on how they felt about it. And everybody was in agreement that when we went forward, we needed to kind of recalibrate the whole thing. We have to start from somewhere and move forward. We find ourselves in a situation where there were variations, but to say that we're not being transparent, I don't know how to be more transparent. And Ms. Stanford, I appreciate putting it out and to get feedback, and we've tried to do that, but I can tell you, in the positions that we sit in, sometimes, especially when we get the mandate, hey, we need to fix this, this is the recommendation that we have to come up with to correct this situation. Now, we've got a plan B, we've got a plan C, but I believe this is the best plan that we have going forward. And you're absolutely correct. We can't apply money to this or talk about how much it's going to cost. So when we start saying, depending on what we're going to go forward with in our budget cycle, until we know how much this is going to cost, we can't implement it. That's not necessarily true. The analogy that Mr. Brooks used yesterday is that if we set something in a GPS and we say this is the destination we're trying to get to, first we got to make sure that the navigation system works. And we're just trying to fix the navigation system before we can say this is the destination we're trying to get to. It seemed like a good analogy yesterday, maybe not so good today. But so all we're trying to do is fix the system right now. And this is an opportunity to do that. And we would just ask you guys to support us, because we don't want to jump out there and do this if this isn't something that's going to be board supported, because it's going to be uncomfortable for some. I can tell you it's going to be a huge welcome for others, because it's going to show those disparities where they weren't treated fairly. And it's going to elevate them, and they're going to be happy about it. But for those who receive more than they should have, it's going to be some hard conversations. But the people that are going to be having those conversations are sitting around this table. So to say that we're not trying to be upfront and honest and straightforward about this, it's almost unfair, because we're the ones who are going to have to sit in front of those employees and say, hey, this is what was done wrong the first time, and this is how we're trying to correct it.
So
I really want to give
And I'd like to address the rubric.
I know, she wants to.
And the reason I want to do that is Ms. Ryan wanted to see what other districts do. So the rubric is something that we developed at Southside because of the situation we were in, and we had to figure out a way to fix it. And it's worked very well. So this was what I recommended to your leadership team. And so now we're at this point. As an administrator, all the years that I ever worked in a school district, I worked in Northside for 26 years. When I went from being a teacher, cheer coach, to an assistant principal, somebody came and put a yellow sticker on my desk. That was my salary, and there was no question. And that's what happens at most places. And I don't know if any of y'all have worked in other districts, but there's not a lot of...
Ms. Ferry, the mic.
Yeah, there's not a lot of discussion about your pay. You know, that's kind of the way it is. So when I went from assistant principal, high school assistant principal, to director of secondary human resources, I got another little yellow stickum, and that was my salary, and I just accepted it. And when I came to work here at Judson as executive director, the superintendent threw out a number, and then once I got here, I realized it was too low. But that's what I came in as, and I didn't question it. I mean, and I know you should, but that's, most school districts with midpoint, they don't sit and explain to you, and that's why I felt like this was a very fair rubric that people can understand, and they'll feel comfortable and won't be questioning their salary, because they can actually sit there with you, go through it, and I just think it works very well. But most places do not have a rubric. TASB is starting to recommend some rubrics, because we saw something yesterday on the auxiliary side, which I was excited about. But for the most part, most districts, the superintendent tells you this is what you're going to get, or whoever's in charge of that, and that's it. I mean, and people always say, how do I get to the midpoint? How do I get to the max? Good luck. You know, that's just, and I don't know, you know, if y'all think about, like, over the years, you'd get your little salary projection sheet, and that was that.
Well, I would just like, before we close, any final feedback from my colleagues? Any final comments? Dr. Tagenel?
I just wanted to add a small thing, is that we are working really hard to address inconsistencies as they come to us. And as Ms. Fury has been auditing personnel files and records, if we are finding that we inaccurately paid someone because we missed a year or we missed a service record, we are going back and we are correcting that.
Ms. Canoyer?
I think a rubric like this is probably the most transparent way to calculate pay. It takes any kind of subjectivity out of it. The person who's sitting there looking at the rubric can say, yes, I get it, I understand it, and then it's no questions asked. So to say that this is not a transparent thing, I'm not happy at all about hearing that. We have to start somewhere. We started with the 500s because we knew that was where some of the biggest inconsistencies were. You have been working on other areas as well, have you not?
Right. Remember the last meeting, y'all said get some temps, have them come
Yep.
in and start. So they've actually started, they're just finishing the 300s, I believe. And the good news is it's pretty
okay?
because you've had the same person in the position kind of working on that for a long time, and I think they stayed consistent. And so we did the first 2 employees like on a group, and they were spot on. Like some of your higher paid clerical, they were spot on. So I'm excited
good.
about that because we may not have to do very much there. So.
Good. So what we charged administration with was to fix the problem. We can't then snap back at them because they're bringing us a solution. Things take time. You can't do everything overnight. It's a gradual process. It's a lot of work to go back through and piece these records together to fix everything. And so I'm appreciative of the hard efforts and the work that you've put in, Ms. Fury. I trust you.
Thank you.
And I thank you for being here.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, it looks like there's, Ms. Eaton?
Ms. Fury, thank you. First of all, I apologize to you all. I don't normally do that, but you know, you can only let a pot boil for so long before the lid will come all the way off. We understood, which is why we even put the wheels in motion on this issue, that there was some things that were kind of off tilt. And as a board, when we discussed it last year, when we decided that we need to set up the audits at the urgency, especially of Mr. Macias, we understood that it wasn't just about seeing who's getting paid what and how they're getting paid, but we needed to fix everything. We need to fix the scales as far as the pay and people's promotion, how they get credited for their time. This is how I learned a lot about, because I've never been a public school teacher. I've been an instructor in the military, quite different, because no matter what you teach, you can teach bomb making and map reading, and you're getting paid at your rank. But we understood that there was going to be more than one piece to this for us to fix it. And that is what we're trying to do. I do not want to give our employees the impression that somebody done lit a match and we're trying to burn down the building. That's not our intent. Our intent is to fix it, to make it, as Mr. Macias tells us all the time, transparency, transparency, transparency. And that is why we brought you in. That is why we brought in the other people that are working on the other parts, so we can get it all back together and everyone can see what's going on. Thank you. Again, I say thank you, and thank you to our staff.
Well, I will say my last remarks, and then we'll close the meeting. Again, thank you for your hard work. I appreciate the effort. Know that the sentiment in this board really wants a good system. And even Ms. Ryan's point, her goal is like ours. We want a stronger system. And this is our opportunity to do this. I'll put out there that there's still one more piece left in my mind that we need to pursue, and that's job descriptions and ensuring that we are actually capturing what an individual does so that we're compensating them appropriately. That'll be the next step in this process, but we're closing the gap. And I just want to thank administration, Dr. Fields, my colleagues for their time. We are in overtime, and my apologies, but again, thank you. It's 6:41. We are now adjourned.
Dr. Taganow, can you please speak with